One of our directors is online under an assumed name.
I'm using my son's computer.
Okay.
Brilliant.
No problem. All right. Once you assume your seat, Councillor,
Standing up.
then I'll ask you to stand up. Councillors, staff, members of the gallery, welcome to the council meeting for Tuesday the 23rd of February, and in doing so I'll acknowledge that the Kaurna people are the traditional custodians of the land. We acknowledge that we're on the traditional country of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains region, and we pay our respects to elders past and present. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationships with the land, and we acknowledge that they are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today. Also read you the Council Pledge. We seek wisdom and understanding as we face the duties of our united task, praying for the peace and prosperity of our city. Please be seated. Apologies to those rushing from the previous function at a newish venue in our gallery. I think that worked very well. So just a different arrangement there. On leave we have nil, I think, and apologies, we have nil. Declaration by members of a conflict of interest. I'll declare a perceived conflict with item 10.8, the Alga NGA conference application for me to attend. The Deputy Mayor will take over during the meeting for that item. Are there any other conflicts of interest people wish to declare? No. We'll move on to confirming the minutes. So the minutes for the ordinary meeting of council for Tuesday the 19th of January, the minutes of the special council meeting held on Thursday the 28th of January. I'm happy to move that they be read and confirmed as a true record.
So moved.
You, Councillor, wish to speak to it?
I thank you.
Have a seconder?
You're on your right.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Harris to my right. Wish to speak to it?
No, thank you.
Any further debate? That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Public question time is the next item. Item 6. We have 15 minutes maximum allowed for questions from the members of the gallery. A maximum of 3 minutes per person should they need it, unless they request an extension of time. So do we have any questions from the gallery? Mr. Standard, if you'd like to come forward. Thank you. For the purposes of the minutes, if you could state your name and address.
Mark Standen, 7 Mawson Street, Nailsworth.
And you have your 3 minutes.
My question is to the Director of Infrastructure, who I'm happy is not a cat at this point.
We can still hear you.
Is it possible to estimate what time what date Nganuwira will be closed for the beginning of works?
Okay, thank you. Director? You just have to unmute yourself. There we go.
Through the chair, I'm sorry I don't have that information at hand. We do have a program. I'd be happy to present that information to yourself in the next couple of days, if that's okay.
Yep, very happy with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Are there any further questions from members of the gallery? There being none, we'll conclude public question time and move to the next item, which is a petition. The petition relates to a deputation that we're considering at item 8.1. I just want to seek leave from members tonight to actually ask the deputy to speak first and then consider the item of the petition which it relates. Seems odd to do it the other way around. So just seek leave of the meeting. All those in favour of moving 8.1 forward? Thank you. That is carried. And I now move to item 8.1 and ask Ms. Anna Peluso to come forward and assume the chair, or you can stand if you wish. And for the purpose of the minutes, if you could state your name and address.
Well, good evening, everyone.
Sorry, if you just state your name and address.
I was going to say that in a minute, but no. Okay. My name is Anna Peluso, and I have lived at number 19 Myrtle Street, Prospect, with my husband for the last 51 years.
Okay, thank you very much, and you've got 5 minutes.
Well, I said that my name is, so I want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak to you on a matter that has become daily safety concern for me and a number of residents. We love it here and are very happy with what has been happening on Prospect Road and surroundings with all the new cafes and restaurants and shops. However, changes also present a growing issue with all the new growing issue with the safety of the residents of Myrtle Street. More people coming to Prospect means more cars that need parking, and many use our street throughout the day and night for both short and long-term parking. It has become chaotic, unsafe, and as ratepayers, we want to see a solution. I would like to share 4 points of concern so that Council might find appropriate solutions to make our suburb a safer place to live. Access to our driveways. First of all, we need easy access in and out of our property, which at the moment on many days is difficult to do. People park edge to edge of the driveway and across from you in many cases, as not all of us have a driveway. As you are trying to drive out, you cannot see who is coming down or up the street, making it unsafe and very difficult for us to get out. And when you do, you have nowhere to go as you have cars lined up on both sides of the street. Many of us are retired residents now living in a more chaotic and unsafe street. A suggestion to remediate this might be identifying specific parking spaces at a safe distance from the driveways. The volume of traffic. Myrtle Street is now more clogged with cars than ever before, right across the day and night. Road rage is escalating, especially from Prospect Road to Vaughan Road. Come and speak to the residents and they will tell you their stories. We have almost seen a punch-out because of these issues. Myrtle Street is not wide enough to handle parking on both sides of the street and have the volume of cars that are travelling here. A suggestion to remediate this might be allowing parking on one side only or a one-way traffic. People who park all day. It is clear that there are people who park in Myrtle Street early in the morning and don't return until late afternoon. This is not fair to the residents of Myrtle Street and those who wish to go for a coffee or lunch. Busy residential streets should not be used as park and ride. A suggestion to remediate this might be time limits for Myrtle Street, parking no more than 2 hours. Intersection of Prospect Road and Myrtle Street. There is a major concern with congestion at this intersection. Cars entering Myrtle Street from Prospect Road, together with those leaving and those entering and exiting the car park between Myrtle and Rose Streets, are often congested to the point of stalemate, with no room for cars to pull over to create space for others to drive past. A possible solution for this situation is not to have any parking at the eastern end of Myrtle Street to provide greater ease of access for vehicles entering and exiting our street. Conclusion. With the massive increase in traffic from visitors, I ask Council to implement new ways to create a safer environment for residents and our families, as well as for those visitors who now consider Prospect a destination for entertainment. Many Myrtle Street residents have gone to the Council on numerous occasions about this issue and would like to see action taken. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Just hold on there. We might have some questions from elected members. Should there be any questions? Councillor De Backer.
Just a quick question. We've had similar complaints through narrow streets quite recently, and one of the issues that came back was that because of our parking permits, if there was timed parking, unless you didn't have off-street parking for your own car in your property, you wouldn't be granted a permit. Would that be an issue for timed parking for residents?
Well, on the petition, you've got the petition.
Yes.
I asked for a 2-hour limit, and if we could have signage from the council, each resident, so that your family or friends or yourself, a resident, would put that on the car so they can park as long as they like.
Because it's not our current policy, so just so you're mindful of that.
Just questions only, folks. We've got the next item we can debate. Councillor Barnett.
Yes, thank you, Anna, for your presentation. If you had, and I understand, you're representing petitioners and residents as well. So if there was a priority to make it simpler, just one priority. What would you
The
like
driveway.
council- driveway?
The driveway, I suggested some yellow lines on either side of the driveway so that people do not park right to the end. When you have got, like our house,
Yeah.
people parking to the edge of this side, people parking to the edge of that side, and a car parked across the road because there's no driveway. Do you know how difficult it is? Now, we've just got a normal car, but we have a son who has a big ute, and other people with bigger cars than us, it's not easy to get around. You know, and our street is so narrow. We have, I don't know whether they said they were showing, didn't look. One resident, she counted how many cars every day park in our street from November, I think, till February. That's a lot of cars. And when they park, you know, close together, you've only got the little driveway to get yourself in, and then this other car has to go, all these cars have to come down, and you're queued up behind. That's what happened to me the day I came to council and complained, because there was too many people coming down, too many going up, and we had nowhere to go.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Ripp.
Just sort of let you know that photos were emailed to us. We have seen the photos.
Yes.
So just to let you know that.
Oh, and the list of cars counted.
Got that.
All
Yes,
that.
got that.
Thank you.
I just thought I'd check with you if you're aware that, following on from Councillor De Backer's comment and a fair question, just thought I'd check with you if you're aware and the residents are aware that if we install time parking, there's actually not the option in our current policies for residents to be exempt from that. So the residents will
Well, some of them
be.
wouldn't be very happy because some of them don't have parking, enough parking inside. They don't have a driveway, and they've only have one car park in the back. So where are they going to park the other car?
That's why I'm asking if you're aware, because that's an important point to note, that it's not if it's time parking, it's everyone. It applies to everyone. So I'm just making you aware of that, because a lot of residents aren't aware.
Well, I can tell you they wouldn't be happy.
Yeah.
I can tell you.
Under a current
Yes, thank you. Questions only at this point. Any further questions? There being none, thank you very much for your deputation and for your petition, and for raising this issue with us and doing so in such a detailed way. So thank you very much. If you just presume you'll see in the gallery, we'll now move to discuss the petition. Yeah. Thank you very much. We'll now resume the agenda as published to elected members, which is item 7.1, the petition, parking and traffic congestion in Myrtle Street Prospect, recommendations on page 1. Somebody happy to move it in its current form? Councillor Barnett, do you wish to speak to it?
Well, I think from the details that we've had from the petition, I mean, this is not the first time that we've come to it. And I'm also recognise the fact that in an email from our CEO that we will be looking at this much further. And I keep on saying workshop upon workshop upon workshop upon workshop. So I would really like the working party that the CEO is forming, that we could really address this. And just noting from the petitioner that one of the first main priorities was about getting out of the driveway, which is allowable under our narrow street policy, of which Myrtle Street is on that list. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Councillor De Backer, I saw first. Would you speak to it?
Yeah, I would. Look, I just thank the petitioner to bringing it to our attention. And it is a shame. I concur with Councillor Barnett that we haven't had a workshop, and we should have had workshops 12 months ago, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, because it's an increasing problem. And I think it's one of these things we call a wicked problem. It's going to get worse as things get busier. However, we also have to be clear where parking is allowed. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I know that Nord currently have an on-street parking policy out for consultation at the moment. I suggest we have a good hard look at what they're doing instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, because in many ways what's happening here is similar to what's happening in Nord Parade. However, acknowledging they've actually got a lot of off-street parking with, 2 or 3 deck park, and that master planning we have to look at as well for the whole precinct. So again, thanks to the petitioners. And just to note on our current policy, so if you look at the narrow streets policy, this is the issue we've had come back from Tianu. So we had a lot of residents supporting until they realised that they wouldn't get a parking permit. And there are exemptions for people that have no off-street parking or need wheelchair access and that kind of thing. So there are those things. But at 6.19 of the narrow streets policy, if you look online, it says that 50% of the people must be in favour. Now, I query that because it's not really an effective use of policy if we're trying to make precinct decisions based on the residents who refer back to this. So I think we need to look at a holistic and whether the current policies actually fit what we need to do in this area. So support the motion.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Ripp, and then
Yeah, just thank the residents for bringing their suggestions and ideas through the petition to our attention. Really, really appreciate that. It was really good insight. But yeah, I really think that communication too from staff to residents is really important. And this is why I hesitate when our approach is just to contact or liaise with the head petitioner. I'd like to actually see us, if we to write to all of the people that sign a petition to bring these issues to their attention, because otherwise we'll have communication issues where people aren't aware that they support time parking. They won't get, that they're not exempt. I think we should, anytime someone signs a petition, we shouldn't just be writing to the head petitioner, we should be writing to everyone, and that's going to be my view all the way through, because I see these issues all the time. So I think communication is really important, and I'd like to see us review our petition policy and actually communicate to everyone.
I think it has been, but I'm happy for the CEO to advise us. So, Councillor Group.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a couple of things. The first just relates to, in the report, it does say, so I'm just trying to find it again, that council will come back with some recommendations council administration will investigate the proposal and present a report and recommendation to a future council meeting. Can I just have an indication as to when that's likely to be? And just to foreshadow, there's another question around Alpha Road that I'll be raising later tonight about the same sort of issue, and just having some timing when these things might come back to council.
So, we will try to bring it back as soon as possible. It is a complex issue, as you know. There are many, many operational things, from parking permits to one-way streets to signage that we need to look at. There's no magic bullet, as people might understand. We have to look at a series of tactics, and there are some overarching issues about capacity that we need to look at. We will bring that back as soon as practical. We understand it's urgent. We understand from elected members this is something administration has to address as a matter of urgency. But we want to come back in an informed way.
And secondly, on that, just for those in the chamber, back in November 2017, you might recall the motion that I put in around traffic management, particularly looking at new ways of doing it. I'm pleased to say I did have met with the CEO and the director in recent weeks, and have a commitment to look at a number of things within the next 8 weeks, I think, both around parking permits, which was a subject of a motion probably a year or so ago, and also the innovation in traffic management. So I'm sure that they will both be coming to workshop very soon. In terms of the parking permit, I think we do need to, I don't share the same view of some of us around the table, or some of you around the table, around the use of parking permits. I think we should use them. I think we should allow them to exist, and I've been open about that in the past. But I think we need to have a good conversation about what that looks like. So I think this issue is not dissimilar to issues in other streets we've got. I think we do need to work out how we're going to deal with it, particularly with more people in the city, more people coming to Prospect Road. And I'm looking forward to the workshop both on the parking permit and also innovation and traffic management that will be coming up fairly soon. So thank you to the CEO for expediting that.
Thank you. Any further debate? Just from the chair, I'm delighted, Anna, that you've come forward with that. I was contacted by Anna some weeks ago about this dilemma, and she's not the first to complain. And I encouraged her to seek the support of whatever else people on the street wanted. So it's always good for us to get a petition. On their own, they don't do a lot, but they are a very good flag-waving exercise. And the petition has gone to a lot of trouble to put options on the petition, which I think is very helpful. Mind you, some of them anyone would say yes to, but it does give us an insight into the extent of feeling within the street. And I think that's helpful for the staff, because the CEO is committed to come back to us with some ideas and solutions. Notwithstanding what's been suggested, they have to be workable, lawful solutions, and that'll take some effort. So firstly, thank you to the petitioner for the trouble that you've gone to, sending us the photographs, and also for the person who's done some statistics. Now, this is a wicked problem, as other elected members have said, and I look forward to seeing what the report says. However, I fear I know what most of it will say. We need to get beyond the obvious constraints and work out strategically what we need to do. And as elected members, the hands on the strategic reins are ours. It is always possible to sort out parking in a street by making it timed, by restricting it, by putting yellow lines in. All those things will restrict the amount of parking available for patrons of the businesses on Prospect Road, which this council's decided that we want to support and grow. So how do we resolve these tensions? And that's what we all need to have a good hard think about, because removing parks from Myrtle Street would satisfy some people, but would create tensions in other places. And if we haven't got new places for people to park, we will exacerbate an existing problem. So there's one thing I'd like the report to address. The second is that if we are going to talk about restricting parking across driveways or near driveways, that'll need some analysis in terms of how we do that. The funny things happen. When you put yellow lines in to say you can't park here, sometimes people park a car out the middle of the front of the house in between yellow lines where you could park two cars, but they park one car, so there's insufficient room left at the front or the rear of them to make sure that no one else can park there. And often that's the resident decides to do that. So instead of parking in their own driveway, they park out the front so no one else can park there. And in my estimation, that's a very poor use of public land. And the street is, of course, public land. It's owned by the city as a whole, not by the resident as an individual. So that's a dilemma I'd also like the report to address, whether we have marked bays, as the petitioner suggested, which I support, or yellow lines like in Harvey Street, which is pretty visually, I think, pretty ordinary. The issue of permits also needs to be discussed. Elected members have asked repeatedly for that issue to be looked at, and it hasn't so far, so I hope this is a further catalyst to do that. The issue of permits is a vexed one, because of course if you give a permit to somebody, it has to attach to the registration number on the car, or we're told by a staff it's not enforceable. So which car? And does that mean you make sure that car is always on the street because that's got the permit, which means you have one car tied to the street or a space tied to a car that no one else can use. Now, in the City of Adelaide, they have many, many permit parks that don't operate until after hours. So during business hours, they're available for everybody, but after work, you bring your car, ostensibly bring it back from work. I presume that's what they've thought of. That is your park, not somebody else's park. So if we have permits, do they operate during the day or only at night? Another issue might be to think about these streets in particular, which have rear lane access. So some houses don't have a driveway at all, and that's very, very, very rare in our city. Highbury Street, there's some there. These houses have mostly got driveways, not all, but they all have rear lane access. So I think we have to think carefully about whether we give up public land for private parking to properties that have front and rear access or not. And I think that's a vexed issue, but we need solutions. We need good policy around this. So I'm looking forward to the report addressing all those matters and the matters that the petitioner has raised. We need to get on top of this, and I'm very grateful that the petitioner has got us to a point where we have a report in front of us telling us that we've got some action happening and be a further report coming back to us. So I commend the recommendation, the motion to you. Any further debate on this item? As a mover, Councillor Barnett, do you wish to sum up?
Yes, all very good comments, but deja vu, how many more times are we going to be having these petitions come to us? We really need to get on and bite the bullet and look at it in a very good policy way, as well as the practical procedural way. I note that our narrow streets policy, of which Myrtle Street and so many others that come to us for complaints about these issues was, 2015, 2016. So I think it's very timely. I mean, residents need to be able to get in and out of their own properties. I think that's just really a bottom given line. We have others that have schools nearby. I have Boyle Street residents every single day complaining cannot get out, elderly parent, possible rush to hospital. I mean, we live in the real world. We've got to have some real world solutions. So I commend this to you.
Thank you. That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against it is carried unanimously. Thank you to the petitioner and those in the gallery who have come to that item. That concludes discussion on that item tonight. You're more than welcome to stay for the rest of the council meeting if you wish. But if you wanted to race home and do your hair, wash the dog, paint your nails, so we would understand that. So, but thank you very much for your work so far.
Thank you.
Our pleasure. And the staff will be in touch.
There's no chair there.
You could move around if you wanted, Councillor, because there's no more deputations. So we'll just move on now to reports for decision. On 10.1, the draft community plan towards 2040, recommendations on page 4 to 5. Does anybody like to move in its current form? Councillor Ripp, do you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, I'll move to get it on the table, and I just want to again thank the staff for taking on board our initial suggestions to make this a 20-year sort of plan and vision instead of just sticking to the regulated thing of a 4-year plan. I think it's really exciting that we've got it to where it is. And look, I'll leave my comments there and obviously listen to a debate and then I'll sum up.
Excellent, thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Again,
Right,
I do want to get home tonight.
A seconder followed by 4 thirders. Councillor Barnett, do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, just really pleased. We have worked on this time again, so I've got no more to say other than I support it.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Wen.
Thank you to the staff for listening to us and refining it. I think what we have in front of us is colourful, it's easy to understand. Just happy with the layout of it and some of the images used there. So just want to say thank you for presenting to us like that.
Thank you. And Councillor De Backer, did I see?
Yes, just briefly. So similar comments. I think it's, it looks different because we look different, and I think it's aspirational and it's always been that way. And I think having community facilitated in there is a really important part of the plan because we want to be enabling our community to do things, not necessarily delivering everything as an administration or as a council. So I think it's great. I'm really excited to see how it's communicated in and around the city. I noticed that we're having some billboards, I think, at some of the play spaces, and I look forward to seeing it in some of the publications coming out. And it'd be nice to get some media. I know strategic plans are never that exciting, but if we can pull some things out there, they're a bit out there and a bit different. It'd be nice to get some talk about it.
Yep, very good. Thank you.
Also,
thank you. Any further debate? Deputy Mayor.
Can I ask a question, please?
Can.
Thank you. I will. What are our plans around making sure that we're going toward 2040 in like 4 or 5 years' time? And do we plan to keep extending that out towards 245 or 250 and always have that 20-year view, or are we going to head toward 240? How do we know what we thought we might head toward is being effective and happening, and how do we keep that concept going rather than doing it once and then finding ourselves at 2039? Well, some people finding themselves at 2039 and realising that we're almost there. So what's the plan for keeping this live moving forward, that long-term picture?
Thank you. I'll ask Sarah to deal with the operational stuff in a second in terms of the annual, but we are required under legislation to do one of these every 4 years. So we will need to revisit this in 4 years' time at most. We, of course, need to join the dots with the budget every year. But probably more to the point, CEO, just your implementation process, I guess, around progressing the longer-term objectives.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Look, obviously they didn't come down on tablets of stone. It'll be amended. I think we talked about the approach to 2040 allows for aspiration, allows for vision casting, but we do know it comes to the harsh reality every year of an annual business plan and budget, and then a more real 2 to 4 year business plan, strategic plan. I'm sure as we move towards 2040, there will be vision casting beyond 2040, But at the moment, really, it gives council an opportunity to vision cast well beyond the near future, but at the same time will be brought very much down to earth on an annual business plan and basically a 4-year strategic plan rotation. So I think the most important thing about the 2040 plan is it's broken down effectively into 5 strategic plans. And certainly I won't be here, but certainly towards 2040, whoever's here will be working on vision casting maybe to 2050, 2060. But look, I was really pleased, Chair, that we took it to the community. It was very little change and a lot of support, and McGregor Tan really confirmed.
Thank you, and sad to hear you won't be here in 2040.
Well, it's an aspiration, Chair, but
aspiration not to be here. Don't take that personally. Yeah, who will be here? Sorry, back to you, Deputy Mayor, if you wish to speak to the matter. That was okay. Any further debate? Councillor Grigg.
One of my sons gets his way, he'll be here in 2040. But look, I just want to echo the chorus of thanks really to the staff for putting this together. I think actually having a 20-year outlook is really exciting. And when I was looking at the title of this Towards 2040, I was thinking back to my youth when I used to watch this TV show called Towards 2000. Some of you might remember it. And it kind of came up with all these wacky things that were going to happen in the future. And no one ever knew if they were really going to take off or not. But they were great ideas and kind of got people thinking about doing things differently and became quite inspirational. It then was called Beyond 2000. But in the 80s, it was called, Towards 2000. So I just think this is a little bit the same. We're kind of, looking at what's going to happen in 20 years' time. I think it's really exciting. I think one of the other councillors mentioned, the need to get some media around this. I think the fact that we're actually looking 20 years out is probably a bit unique in local government. And so I think we should try and promote that as best we can. But thank you for all of those who pulled it together from an administration point of view. I think it's a fantastic result. And I'm very proud to be part of this council releasing this now.
Indeed. Any further debate? That concludes the debate. Councillor Ripp, do you wish to sum up?
None other, just to say, echo all the comments made tonight.
Excellent. That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against? It is carried unanimously. Excellent. 10.2, Vine Street Plaza Place-Based Concepts, recommendations on page 60. Somebody happy to move it in its current form? Councillor Pearce.
Yeah, I'm happy to move it. Now, clearly, in the original plan, it wasn't in the original plan, but with some strong deputations from Maryland, Kingston, and a petition with 267 signatories, it sort of came to light that it was worthwhile, and it's good to see that the staff have fitted it in. Obviously, there's 2 options. One was clearly too financially expensive for us to go ahead with, but I'm pleased to see that we can fit this in with a $10,000 budget, and happy to move it.
Okay, thank you. Got a seconder? Councillor Barnett.
Only on proviso that within the report there was opportunity to look at an option 3, which is not.
Sorry. Are you seconding and speaking to it? Because you can't have a subject to as a seconder.
No. I won't second it then.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder anywhere? Deputy Mayor, do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, I think Power to the People, Marilyn has brought concerns around certain aspects of how we went about this process to the table, and they've been heard, and we're proposing acting upon them to the extent that we think we can afford it. And I think it's a great example of the community getting involved and driving something that they're passionate about. And here's an outcome which hopefully we're all happy with.
Thank you. Councillor Barnett, did you wish to speak now?
Yes, there was canvassed in the report that could be a combination of us, option 2 to form option 3. So obviously option 1 does capture some of what representatives have come to us about and petition. Option 2 is obviously far too expensive and takes up far too much space. The concept is that we want there to be a variety of uses for the plaza and have the space for doing that. I do like the idea of an Aboriginal Ghana theme and perhaps use of an area under the western side under one or two plane trees. So what I'll just speak to it first, and then I may have to move in a minute. With an option 3, I think that we can get children's play elements by the seating areas. In our concept plan, we have like nodes or modules, and particularly around the cafe, and that is where the parents and the children like congregate. So I'm just thinking that there could be some play elements actually where people are with their children, instead of the children having to go off somewhere in the plaza, where the parents or the carers. And in option 1, there's like a trail leading to an area that could be part of what's in option 2 under the thing, because we haven't got in option 1, from what I could see, that there was very much to do with being in sort of shade or possible. It says garden with established trees, walls and buildings with imaginative spaces. So I just think that could be something to be considered as well. And just some of the elements that were in the more expensive one, but perhaps could be out of the shopping list of all of those things. I mean, a very expensive shopping list. But I think you could have some items that possibly could come under option 1 that were like a timber log snake, some of the wood carved animals. I noticed online on that particular company that did the Ghana themed one, they had a wooden gum nut which could lend itself to climbing and seating, and the carved part of it very tactile and sensory, but would fit in with our the lighting features that we have, our artworks of the gum nuts, and some of the other things. So I guess what I'm saying, I'm hoping that what we're moving here within the imagination discovery space, I guess, could still incorporate some of the suggestions that I've had. So we'll see how we go with the $10,000 and what things are selected there, I guess, because obviously that's all we can really afford at the moment. And I guess there's always options later on down the track if things
1 minute if you
don't quite work out, and there could be some, other things done. All right, so I'll leave it up there for the moment. No.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further debate? Councillor Groot.
Sorry, Councillor Backer. Look, thank you for the report. I'm hearing Councillor Barnett. I guess I might go a step further and make an amendment, because I think as much as the imagination discovery space is great, I'm not sure it quite goes far enough. And I'll look forward to the CO out there with the butterflies and the fairies putting them up and whatever else you might choose to do. I really think it would be good to have some of the other elements that are included. Now, there's $79,893 worth. We don't need $80,000 worth of other items, but I wonder whether there's scope for us to have another $10,000 or $15,000. Now, I don't know if it's so easy to use it as a shopping list. So I might ask as a question first, if we were to, if there was a motion to increase the budget somewhat, could we take some options out of option 2, or is it not quite that simple?
So, Chair, I'd have to refer that to the director who's online.
Who was? There he is, Director.
Through the Chair, thank you for the question. Yes, we could incorporate, if additional budget was permitted, certain items. You can't read each item on its own though, because, for example, the snake log, $3,800, for example, there'd also be accompanying earthworks that would go with that, which is a separate budget item. But if council were to allocate an amount, we could incorporate some of these items as a variation to option 2.
Thank you.
Okay, well, look, I'll have a go. I'd like to move a motion.
Amendment.
Oh, wait, amendment as well, yes. Thank you, councillor, an amendment. So if we can just replicate point 3 and make it read the council approves, I'm going to say $30,000 the Vine Street Plaza Imagination Discovery Space. And maybe if we can just put the words, sorry, I haven't got this pre-prepared. After the word, thank you, man. After the, I normally do. After the word discovery space, if we could say including elements of nature play. So I'll put that up and I'll just see how we go.
All right, as per my adopted protocol, just for consistency, I'll ask the mover and seconder if they're happy to incorporate. They don't need to. They can make it go through an amendment process, but I just ask mover if you're happy to incorporate the change.
Look, I'm just mindful of the money.
Sorry, it's a yes or a no? Okay, then it goes to an amendment. Did you wish to speak further to the amendment, Councillor Group, before I seek a seconder?
No, I'm happy just to move to a seconder.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Councillor Harris, do you wish to speak to it?
Just very briefly, because I've looked through some of the other items and play equipment and various things in there that sitting out there today, seeing the work that they're doing out there. It's not a big area, but if people were taking tin lids or young children and they're around in various places to sit, I think this one we've got, while fairly good, is just lacking in a couple of other things to play. So I'm happy to support it. I trust our director and his offsiders would look into what will fit in there and play, but you can take a child there while you're sitting having a coffee or one of these pancake things, and the kids will get happy for a little while, but I believe some of these other things will make them happy a lot longer. So I'm supporting it.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor De Backer.
Yeah, look, I won't support it just purely on process. I think the $10,000, while not huge amount, I think all of us come from different wards and there's a certain process, and I'd hate to see this to be seen as queue jumping. I mean, we've certainly got the Prospect Estate in the north and other areas in Broadview, and I know the petitioner's got some valid points, but obviously we've got a line of things that we can do. And I don't see that the $10,000 that we spend initially, if that's supported, and I'm certainly supportive of that because I think it should have been addressed in the initial things. I'm not quite happy with the suggestions, but I'm not going to get operational. But it could be a part 1. And I think we could engage someone like your Rotary or artists or things. There's other ways we potentially could fund a stage 2. And keeping in mind, this is going to be a 2-pronged event space. I mean, the reason we're moving all this paving out the way is to actually activate Vine Street Plaza. It means tables and chairs and things like that. And wouldn't it be great if we had like the Adelaide City Pigeon or the Pigs or whatever that's art but also adventure? So I think that together the infrastructure team and the arts team can come up with something really exciting. So, I mean, I'm not going to support the $30,000 amendment. I'm going to support the $10,000. But if we look at it as a phase 1 and follow process, as we all want to happen across the city. So that's where I'm sitting.
Okay, thank you. Further debate on the amendment? Councillor Ripp.
Well, first of all, just a question. Regardless if it's 10,000 or 30,000 that gets up, how's this balance? New equipment versus staff costs, or is this will all of this money actually go to purchasing equipment, or does some of it go to labour costs as well? Can I just get a bit of breakdown of that?
CEO, none of it will go to labour costs. They are sunk, so all of it would be committed to new equipment.
you. And also, additional question. Obviously, these recommendations get put up, obviously with a few days' notice for us. So, in terms of the budget review, where I know we have quite a few items that will come up, and it will say so it's such and such subject to a future budget review. But what does that actually mean in terms of where will this $10,000 or $30,000 come from? Have the staff got already, or is it just sort of, you know?
I'll take the question. CEO.
Through you, Chair, to the Director.
Through the Chair, you see on item 10.10, we are reporting a favorable budget variation of $400,000. That is to actually reduce the funding shortfall. So any decision to increase the budget will actually chip into the favorable budget variation.
Thank you. Sorry, the question was the 10,000 or the 30,000, and that's your answer. Either will have an impact.
The amount will actually basically we will be using the budget variation, the federal budget, to fund this.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm not sure if the other director hasn't got $10,000 somewhere that he was going to refer to. Is it? This was going to be a budget variation, I presume. Director of Infrastructure.
Yes, as a division, we're not in a position to identify any savings at this stage. Maybe at the third quarter, we may be in that position.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. There's a comprehensive answer to that question, Councillor. Anything further? Deputy Mayor.
I agree with Councillor De Backer. I'm not sure if I'm going to support this or not, but you know, it seems out of order of process that we can, you know, arbitrarily approve tripling the budget that we'd put aside for this, given the points that Ginny made before. I don't know, that doesn't necessarily give us carte blanche to start spending that windfall in this way. So I'm interested to hear what some of the other elected members have got to say about this. I'd love to support it. I think that would be good. But maybe it does have to be a staged approach where we get to live in it for a little while, and then we see where the gaps are, and then put forward a budget bid in a subsequent financial year planning process, and then beef up the snake logs. Is that what we're doing? Buying some snake logs or
Echidnas.
Echidnas? Yeah, some of those things that are on springs that
Rockers.
Yeah, we
Rockers,
could get them from. Yeah. Anyway, that's my thoughts. I'd like the idea of supporting it, but I don't know whether I can just support a approval of 30 grand just on the spot like that.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Wynne.
20 more.
I agree with Councillor De Backer. I think you know, to increase it by $20,000 where we haven't even approved the $10,000 is huge. Is quite significant. I'd like to see it in stages as well. Let's you know, vote on the 10,000 and see what we have there, and if it needs further input into the resources to upgrade it, then we can then decide. So at this stage, I won't be supporting the $30,000, the 20,000 addition to what was in the report.
Thank you. Any further speakers?
Can I sum up?
No.
Can I ask a question? Say no. Okay, say no.
You know, I go on technicalities, and technically, yes, you can ask a question.
Okay, may I ask a question? The question is just to confirm with the Director of Finance. I should know that by now, shouldn't I? Corporate Services. 10.10, and I was going to raise this had I thought about it earlier. Is it correct that we've got a net budget adjustment of $468,000 favourable, of which $20,000 is barely 4 or 5% of that?
Don't need to direct that to anyone but the chair, and the answer is in front of you, Councillor.
Just making the point.
That I should have said no.
Okay, the option.
Councillor Barnett.
So the idea is that we're looking at 30,000 more.
20,000 more.
Well, 20,000 more, but with a total of 30,000, compared with the idea that Part 3, which hasn't got, some of us have been saying this, but the intent is not in Part 3, is that this would be a first phase. So that's my dilemma, that if anybody else is left to move Part 3 as an amendment that Council approves, $10,000 as a first phase. So anyway, all right.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Not many left. Just from the chair, I'm not sure where this is going to go. It's clearly going to be a split vote, and it might be half and half. I'm not sure. Just so I don't like casting a vote without you knowing what I'm thinking beforehand. I think that's kind of anyway. I don't like doing that. So I'm a bit torn on this because I understand the desire to have stuff for kids to do in the space. Mind you, I've seen plenty of kids there, and they seem to have plenty to do. That being said, we've had the petition. We've had the petitioner. There's a desire to do more. There's a motion for $10,000 to do a range of things which are not fixed. There's some discussion here, which I'm sure the director's taking note of, that there might be some things from option 2 that would be better than some of the things mentioned in option 1. And I'm sure that's sensible feedback. I would agree with that feedback. I've also spoken to the director about the bird sculptures, which were running along the back of the garden bed in the old configuration. That had a walking trail next to them and kids could climb on them and explore them and play with them a bit. They've been moved to the Nailsworth Community Centre because they had to find a home. There was no reason why they couldn't be back here because they were kind of commissioned for this space. And I thought we already own them. They're very expensive to buy and probably about, from memory, about 16 grand I think we paid to buy them. We already own them. So shifting them back might be part of the solution. And that would be staff time, as I understand, because it's minor concrete works and relocation works and don't need much. I don't think they need a crane or anything. I'm also mindful that this project has taken far too long, but I can remember right back to its origins that there were a number of elected members who had a lot of discomfort about spending any money out here in this plaza. There was a scheme for $220,000, which was argued against by some elected members, and staff showed us that wasn't going to achieve anywhere near enough. That budget was then shown it really should be more like something double that, and later on we had a scheme that was 4 times that, and the result was we said no, it's got to be this much. And that budget, I've been trying to work with the team, is extremely tight. And so I'm sitting here thinking, how do I weigh up this request for an amendment to increase this amount we don't already have in the context of previous discussions that the elected members here have clearly stated about this particular space? I don't know the answer to that, but I feel as if the answer to this amendment should be no at this point and get on with what we know we're going to do. Work with the $10,000 because I think it's a modest amount, but it's an amount that can achieve something. And if we're not happy, put in a budget bid at a subsequent time and get some more material or some more elements into the space. I'm also cognizant of what Councillor Tobacco said, which is we want to transform this space into a facilitative space for events, for outdoor dining, for maybe a car show, certainly a market. And we need to see how that works. And we haven't activated that space for a long time. I'm really keen to get it done, see how it works, and then we'll also know how we might further invest in the space, because I'm sure if it works really well, we will want to. If it doesn't work very well at all, we'll probably want to. So I don't think this is our last chance to invest in this space. So at this stage, I'm probably more erring on the side of not in favour of the amendment, but I'll just sort of let you know. If there's no further debate on the amendment, there is no summing up. That concludes debate on the amendment. I'll now put that to the vote. All those in favour of the amendment? 2, 3. All those against the amendment? 2, 3, 4, 5. The amendment is lost.
We missed the echidna breeding season.
They weren't live ones. They're not safe for the kiddies.
Oh, sorry.
We'll resume debate on the motion as moved by Councillor Pearce and seconded by the Deputy Mayor. We still have some other people who...
Do I still have the floor, Mr Mayor? Do I still have the floor?
No.
My 5 minutes are up?
You've effectively, because you've moved the amendment, moved on. Yes. I'm going to rule that way, because you encouraged me to say no before, so I'm doing it now.
I encourage you to say yes this time.
Are there any further speakers to the motion? Never had that request before. So back to you, Councillor Pearce, if you wish to sum up.
Yeah, sure. Look, Councillor agreed. I appreciate. Look, we'd like to see more money poured into it, but I think we can still stage this. And early on, it wasn't put in because of the flexibility of the plaza they wanted to have. So this initial 10,000, we'll see how that goes, and if there's room to move, then I could see us doing further work there in the future. So I just think financially at this stage that is the request I would like.
Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour of the motion? All those against the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. If you're here in the audience gallery for that item, that concludes debate on that item. And we won't be discussing any more about that item tonight, I don't believe. So you're welcome to stay for the balance of the meeting, but if you wish to move on and not be here for all the rest of these very exciting items, we'd perfectly understand that as well. So I think other than staff, you are compelled by the CEO, not me.
We'd like them to remain, Chair.
You'd like them to remain? Well, we'd like them to remain.
Well, I'm sure the Royal we will.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your attendance. Item 10.3, JW Ratley Reserve Consultation Outcomes and Revised Concept Plan. The recommendations on page 68 to 69. Would somebody like to move it in its current form? Councillor Groot, you wish to speak to it?
Look, just briefly, it's good to see some more consultation going ahead on this particular space. I think it's fair to say the community was a little underwhelmed last time round. Just had a question though. There were some items being removed. I'm just trying to find where that was. So the talking tubes and the log armchairs and table have been removed. So question is, why necessarily were they removed? Because I was thinking about how do we add to it rather than have a net taking from it. And where have they gone? And are we going to use them somewhere else in the city?
Thank you. Take the question.
I was thinking Vine Street Plaza might be a very good place to put the talking tubes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to ask the Manager of Infrastructure to comment on this one. He's been delegated this role from the Director.
Manager?
Mayor, I'd have to look into the talking tubes particularly. The other items basically is balancing the budget, basically what we add, what we take away. So if you want those other items, there'd be additional costs to it to actually put them in place. Talking tubes, I believe, an additional item, not actually there currently, so we're not actually taking them.
Okay.
They're an option.
Okay.
The community consultation said they didn't prefer those options. For an extra amount of money, you can add them as well. That's the point of the difference here.
Okay. My apologies, I've misread that. I thought there was something taken from the park, but that's just taken from the concept.
Correct. So I misinterpreted that because I couldn't.
No, sorry, my error. Look, apart from that, I think it's great that we're, as I said, doing something a little bit different. Good that we listen to community. I would encourage administration as we start this process to talk, particularly to the direct neighbours who have spoken to me a number of times around their desire to make sure their properties remain safe and the equipment in the back in the park is of an appropriate distance away from their fences, which I think is not unreasonable. So I just encourage you, if you haven't already, to still maintain those conversations with the neighbours. You'll know who they are. Otherwise, I would commend the motion.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor De Backer, do you wish to speak to it?
Look, yeah, I'm pleased for it to come back and certainly for people's feedback to be taken on board. I'd probably just reiterate something I know the Mayor's mentioned quite a few times. I think page 12, can't see what it is. Basically, this my kids might not choose to go there anymore because there's nothing there for 4 to 6 year olds. The park needs something for the older kids, otherwise it's a waste. So I didn't see much feedback for the teepee. So the teepee through the chair is yet to go in, and there doesn't seem to be any support for that at all in the comments. So I would give feedback probably to infrastructure that no, on the teepee, okay, it doesn't make noise and it doesn't have movement, but I think we do need something that is significant. And I know these bespoke things can be quite expensive, you know, a bespoke logged teepee, but really, if there's something that is a little bit more challenging, wouldn't that be great? We can be sensitive to a point, but obviously this is what's been consulted on, so obviously the neighbours are appeased by this. Yeah, I would be interested in other people's thoughts around the room.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor I saw first, and then Councillor Barnett.
Along with Councillor Groot's point about it's good to see that we've approved $25,000 more and we've done some consultation. I don't know whether I'm just feeling a bit cranky tonight, but this whole process really annoys me. I haven't been a 4-year-old child for a number of years, 48 or thereabouts years, but it seems like we're getting, reading through the list of things that we're choosing from, and I'm looking for swings and I'm looking for a roundabout or, a slippery dip or stuff like that, that kids in that age just love going up and down and up and down and up and down and swing. We seem to be buying into this, a weird conglomeration of things that we're being sold that are super expensive, and I just can't see the point now. And again, I'm not in that demographic. My kids are older than that now, so I don't know, whether little kids of 4 to 6 years old have actually been consulted with, or whether it's, I don't even know what that process is. But are we trying too hard to come up with something that looks cool and trendy and groovy, but doesn't actually suit the purpose that it's intended for? Are we getting too carried away with catalogues and those kind of things like that? And should we be looking to take some of this back to basics and saying, jump on a swing, go on a slippery dip, go on a seesaw or whatever it might be, get out there and have some fun in a really simple way and work out how to use those things and enjoy yourselves. So, we had a whole bunch of this stuff come up. I think the last couple of playgrounds we've done, the recent one that we've spent months and months and months consulting on and changed our mind and put this in and take that out, and there's too much stuff there and there's not enough stuff there. I don't know how hard this is to get right. I'm sure it's not easy. I'm not a playground designer, but it just seems like we're trying too hard with some of this stuff, and the answers are often quite simple. So I'm going to support it, but the process has been pretty excruciating, to be honest.
Yep. Councillor Barnett.
Yes. Look, to me, the feedback was that it obviously needs a small climbing frame. Like, you take something away that someone's been using and they're saying, they want to get back. I just looked online last night and I think you've got rid of the, unless you have a very vivid imagination, you can't really do much with those TV bits of stick going up, honestly. So unless you can turn it into some climbing frame thing, which I don't think you could. So a South Australian firm had its natural sort of stuff and whatever for about $2,500, you can get a combination. It's a climbing frame, a little bit of a slippery dip thing, a bit more traditional stuff, which some of the parents and their kids are saying, like, you took this away, but our kids, that's what they like to play on. So I guess I don't know what the costing is for those totem things. I didn't look that up, but surely we could do a swap for something that they say they want.
Thank you. Councillor Nguyen.
I think with parks and playgrounds, it's really hard, and I get this because I've got young children, and when they were 1 and 4, they loved the swings, they loved the seesaws, they loved the slippery dips. But as they grow up a little bit more, like, those equipments aren't suitable for them. So I think, are we trying to make the equipment? We're trying to cater for a wide range of age, and that doesn't work. Like, if you got little kids and you've got challenging equipment and playground space, it's got to be too hard or too difficult for them, and vice versa. If this is too young and too easy and boring for me. So I feel that we are trying to make the most, create a space to cater for a wide range of children, and it's really hard to cater for that. So that's just my comment as a parent going to different playgrounds. It's really hard to cater for that. I'm happy with, I will support the $25,000 upgrade into the playground space, but I just want to say that for staff, I do think that it's really hard to find the right balance, strike the right balance between finding equipment to cater the younger ones and the mid-teens, and then you've got the 11, 12s. It's really hard.
Okay, thank you. From the chair, I'm going to ask myself if I'll take it in parts Yes, I'll take it in parts. Because I'm okay with parts 1, 3 and 4, but I'm not okay with the concept, and therefore part 2 causes me some concern. I agree with the Deputy Mayor that this process has been really inadequate, is an understatement, I believe. Perhaps the issue is that the neighbours have exerted more influence over this than maybe they should have. I understand that neighbours get concerned about people standing on things and looking over their fence. I kind of get that. I understand neighbours might be concerned about noise, and I kind of get that. But these neighbours chose to live next to a playground. They'd purchased that place knowing that it was a playground. And so there's a certain sense of responsibility for those neighbours, and I'm happy to talk to them individually. No problem at all. They need to be responsible for their decisions. And whilst I'm happy that we take their feedback into account, I don't want to do it to the extent that it makes this playground a place that no one wants to play in. And that's what's happened. It's been dumbed down so much. It's so passive now that it's really not, I don't think, a place that I think excites kids and makes them want to be there. People with dogs, no problems because there's a fence. And I'll go anywhere that there's a fence to let the dog off the leash. And I support that. I'm not a problem with that. But this has been a bit of a dud, and I don't think this concept fixes it. I do know that it needs more money, and we can't have something for nothing. We can't trade in the bits there that we don't like. No one will take them. So I'm okay to say, look, $25,000 is, that's what we've been advised it'll take to do something. Okay, get that allocation and get on with doing something that's not so passive and something that is more active. And I agree with former speakers that I've never been a supporter of the TP. I've seen them in other places, and somebody gets a lot of money for peeling bark off some logs and sticking them in a circle. And kids, I've not seen kids play creatively with them other than stack up firewood in the middle and pretend they're having some sort of fire inside it. Well, we don't have that sort of environment where they can collect sticks and build a fire, let alone we wouldn't want them to light it. If it had a deck inside it, like even just a floor that they could tap on with their feet and step up on and jump off, and that would make it a bit more interesting. Or if there was a platform they could climb into or something they could do with it. But it's just such a passive piece of equipment, and I don't think it would be cheap. And I'd much rather that money went somewhere else. But the talking tubes are popular with little kids in Memorial Gardens, so I'm not against that. It's been taken out, though. But I would really encourage the staff to listen to the feedback, listen to the feedback tonight as well. I would encourage people to support the budget allocation and get on and give us something that will do as good a job as we can in that play space for as much as we can for that amount of money. And I agree with Councillor Nguyen. You can't answer every need with any play space. And this is a small lump of land. It's not going to, it's classified lower down our list. It can't be a regional park. It is what it is. But I do think that what's been done is far too passive, and the suggestions are more of that passive treatment, and I'm not comfortable with that. So that's where I'm at, and I'll take it in parts to see where the elected members are at on all those parts. Any further debate? Councillor Harris.
Yes, thank you. Mine's fairly simple because I was lucky enough with Matthew Mitchell to go walking around Broadview Oval again today, and the comments as you come past the playground, and I've had most people tell me how good it is, a few little problems. But I will say today what was said to me, what's been said to me for. Where's the swings? Where's the bigger slippery dip? We got a thing that's 2.5. We got a round Indian type swing thing, and the comments today were the same they've been. Where's the swings? Where's the slippery dips? So I'm supportive of this motion, but please, as we take it on, let's put something. We've got to really be careful. We can't cater for 1 and 2 year olds, and then 7 and 8, and then 12 and 14, all maybe in a little confined space. But let's spread it out to it. And so I'm supporting the hope that we get something active in there.
Any further debate? Councillor Ripp.
Yeah, I'll back up Councillor Harris with his comments. Overall, I've had obviously good feedback about the Broadview play space, but the same thing, where's the swings, where's the slippery dips, and we've had that. I know the Mayor's been copied into a couple of emails as well around that. But I look at this and go, to me, this is underwhelming. I'm really disappointed with the process. you know, and I don't think we listen to people the first time. And it also goes down to, you know, I'll repeat it again as I have repeated it a couple of times in the past. How do we capture people's feedback using social media as well? Because you only have to go back to some of the posts and the feedback was pretty. It was there. So how do we incorporate that? In part, obviously I was going to answer in part, but you asked yourself that question, so that's good. But I won't be supporting part 2 and the other parts I will support. I do believe that it does need a swing or a slip bit or something. And I don't accept the feedback about the noise. People agree with the mayor. People living near a playground to complain about noise or people coming into that type of space, I think is pretty. Obviously, if it goes to a much greater level than what was there before, but I don't think it will. So I don't. I think we can make this space a lot better than what it currently is on the current concept plan. So I'll support the parts, but I won't be supporting part 2.
Thank you.
Good question.
Well, brief question given you've spoken, Councillor. Yes?
Yeah, just a quick question. I noticed on attachment 13, I can't remember, I think it's page 86, the same images, so this is to the director, he's in the screen, or he's
there waiting.
there, okay. Yeah, so the same images that are on page 86 are also identical to the images that were on the previous one for Vine Plaza. I'm just wondering, have we got a contract with a particular supplier? Because it seems like we seem to be going to the same catalogue, and I think a bit like development.
Brief question, okay. Councillor.
Have we got a contract with a particular supplier, or got a preference to one catalogue?
Thank you. CEO, Director.
Through you.
Through the chair. No, we don't have any contract playground supplier. We just evaluate which piece we believe is most appropriate for any particular location.
Thank you. Again, that answers your question. It's a simple no. Any further speakers in this item? Councillor Pearce.
Yes, I think a few people have mentioned that it's disappointing, and it is. But I'm just interested in, like, in the report, the first paragraph, it said that council received some negative feedback. So the question is, what is some? What is it? Because perhaps before you answer that, we went to 173 properties plus signage. We received 12 online replies. Now, of those 12, 46%, which is 5.5, I don't know where we get the half from, but round up to 6. 6 were happy with it, 4 were unsure, and 2 were not happy with it. So that's of 12 people. Are we sort of, who are we pandering to here? I mean, it's classified as a local park, and I went there the other day. It's out of my area a bit, but it's a nice little park.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Free admission. No one else was there. Didn't see any kids. It's a nice little park. Like, there's lawn. There's not flattering what is there, unfortunately, but a couple of benches. Nice, quiet little park. I don't know, with this 25, it's not going to hit the mark again, I don't think, when you got 6 liking it and the other 6 unsure or not liking it. So we've already spent $75,000 on it. Didn't hit the mark. I don't think the 25 extra will hit the mark either. So I don't really support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Groot, bring us home.
I'd love to. Look, I think the point made earlier is that not all parks can suit all people, and I think that's absolutely correct. And having children who still play in many parks, they've been to this park, they've been to Memorial Gardens, they've been to St Helens, lots of them, and they all provide different challenges. And I think back to when some of the elected members around the table, we were looking at Memorial Gardens and we spoke at length around nature play. And I guess picking up Deputy Mayor's point about these new fandangled things in parks, this is all around nature play and about trying to get kids to use imagination. So I'm really comfortable with items in parks that might not be the traditional items, but are items that are stretching our young people to use imaginations, which won't happen in front of an iPad or a TV or a PlayStation. This is a particular park, particularly unusual park, because it is stuck between 2 houses. Notwithstanding those people bought those houses when the park existed. The park was different when they bought the house. And to Councillor Ripp's point, I don't think there's an issue with noise, and no one's raised the issue of noise with me at all. What they've raised is privacy. So when you've got large bits of equipment, such as things to climb on, which overlooks private fences, that becomes an issue for the neighbours. And I think that's not an unreasonable concern. That said, I think administration's probably heard comments around the TP. I would agree with them, although I'm a little bit more optimistic about the use of the park than maybe some others. And it could be that something climbable can be put in the place of the TP, and that's up to administration to work that through. And that would be good if something could be, even if there are ways to climb up the TP, for example, could be an option to ensure there's some climbing ability. But this park is not a Memorial Gardens. It's not a Broadview Oval. It's not a Charles Kane Reserve. This is a small pocket park in the middle of in the middle of two houses on a fairly busy street. And it's never going to serve the same function as Memorial Gardens. I think what it should, I think the $25,000 does help to improve the amenity. It's not going to hit the mark entirely for what everybody wants, but it never will unless we want to pour another $100,000 into it. So I'll support the motion. I'll be supporting all four parts of the motion. I think we should go ahead and do this. Again, to use to coin a phrase from a previous motion, if it doesn't work and someone wants to come back with another budget review later on, they're more than happy to do that, to put other equipment in. That's up to us as elected members if you choose to do that. But I think we should be going ahead supporting this, supporting the upgrade as it is, with administration hearing our concerns about lack of climbing activity and maybe return to some of those older school play equipments. But as I said, I do think nature play is a very positive thing that we should be supporting. So I commend all four parts of the motion to you.
That concludes debate. I'll take it in parts, as I said. All those in favour of part one? Against? This is carried unanimously. All those in favour of part two? Against? Part two? Part two is lost. All those in favour, please stand. Have your names recorded. Sorry. The vote stays the same. Those indicate just for perfect clarity. All those against indicate by hand. Yep, the vote is so the same. All those in favour of part three. All those against part three. It is carried. All those in favour of part four. Against part four is carried unanimously. Okay, thank you. That concludes debate on item 10.3. And we now move on.
Last question. What does the effect of that vote mean for the upgrade?
Jim, CEO, that you've got $25,000 to go and
a second TP, Chair, I think.
Second TP?
Second TP. In all seriousness, though, levity aside, we've heard loud and clear that the $25,000 needs to be reviewed. Just to the manager, we haven't bought the TP yet.
Through the mayor, we have not.
Good.
No, I'm just checking.
I think even the summer up at decided that wasn't such a good thing. I'm very curious.
Chair, I think we've heard loud and clear that Council does want to spend some more money, but we need to be clearer about that. I think we've heard it and we'll be reviewing. We are a little bit rudderless because the plan hasn't been supported, but we have heard very clearly why it hasn't been supported.
Sorry, can I just supplementary to that question?
Not really.
Okay. So does the revised concept plan have to come back to Council again?
CEO will have to think about that. I think
it feels like we're half pregnant.
With all due respect, yours was a very strange summing up, in which case you said, I think the staff have heard us and they may want to put some other things in instead of the TP, but I'm going to support the concept in part two. Luckily, I believe it was voted down, so it's really clear that we want a different concept. But there's $25,000. Now, CEO, if I was a CEO, not telling him how to suck eggs and knowing the sensitivity, I'd probably bring it back to us. But there's clear feedback which has been heard. I think that's the most important thing. And we've allocated a budget, which is the second most important thing. And we will move on. Yeah, thank you. So, yes. You encourage me, Councillor. Item 10.4, Devonport Terrace Streetscape Draft Concept Plans for Community Consultation, recommendation on pages 87 and 88. Do I have a mover in its current form? Sorry, Councillor Barnett, I recognise first. Do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, I think gathering from some of the residents down there, you know, they just want us to get on with it. It's taken far too long. We recognise, of course, that there have been other things that have happened since we started the original consultation, and that with this we won't be doing the Ovingham station around that, because that still would come to us from all the work that's going on there. We got the
Sorry, there are copies for people if you wish.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, we might have suspended any procedures to actually have a look at some of the things, but so I'm stuck halfway between my speech.
Sorry, Councillor Barnett.
So, and I've spoken with our manager of all things arts, and I'm assured that the public art project will involve public involvement. And also, I think we got sent from some of my questions where the actual trees, there's one tree by one pram ramp. I'm still not sure why we need two pram ramps to access the northern end of Dudley Park Railway Station. And remember, but I understand that the trees are there for site purposes. And as much as I continue to remove any trees, there are some trees that are better to remove than others. So by default, we get that. I think where we're at the moment, at least there are still some things perhaps from the community consultation process still to come back to us, but I think we're hopefully at a point where we can go out to it's taken so jolly long to get there. So I think that's where I'm at the moment.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor.
Can I ask two questions first, please?
Certainly. And just to make sure you understand, there's a printed out copy. The one in the agenda papers is a bit small, if you wish to refer to it. Yes, question.
First question is, I assume that we'll be allocating a budget for ongoing maintenance of this rather long strip that will be.
It's a statement, but you're asking a question about, are we going to?
I said, I assume.
Correct.
With a questioning tone. Can I assume?
Better. Doesn't matter. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Through your chair, yes. Ongoing maintenance budget.
Thank you.
Second, I do have three questions. Sorry. Second question, one of the things that Councillor DeBacker and I noticed when we did a stroll along there one evening was the number of trees that was notified. So do we have a regular sort of drive-by from the team as part of their sort of regular doing the rounds to keep an eye out on those sorts of things, and so we can jump in and do some proactive work as opposed to waiting until it's too late? Is that how we do things?
Saying that that's yes, but I'll refer it to the manager through your chair. Manager?
Through the mayor, yes, we do practically go around and deal with trees that are at stress or in stress, and we do take a proactive manner to approach to actually deal with those best we can, depending on what the actual issue is, size, scale of the tree, how new it is, what water resistance it's actually got. There's no one answer. There's a number of issues that go wrong. But, we do try to be proactive, and we probably are successful in the majority of cases, but we do still see some do die or become sick as a result of other matters.
Thank you. Third question.
Then last question. So I note that the work is to take place May to June 2021. So my question is, will the work cause any disruptions to the sporting field down there and the people who participate in sporting activities during winter, which is it's very busy space around Cane Reserve? So do we anticipate any disruption there, or are we dealing with areas that aren't really related to Cane Reserve?
So again, Chair, just through you to the manager.
Okay. The impacts on Charles Cane Reserve will be impacting that area still up until probably the third week in March, as we do other work to finalise around Cane Reserve. Materially, though, the work should be to the north and south of that after that period, but you want to expect works up until towards the end of March that's going to impact part in that area. Once we get that under control, we should actually be able to leave that alone pretty well. Most of our works will be along other sections of Devonport Terrace from that point on.
Yep. Thank you. Anything further?
Okay, so now I will talk to the motion. So my concern way back in the day was that we were going to end up with something generic. I thought we had an opportunity to come up with something that was a little bit more interesting than that. And we've been through quite a process here of looking at all the things we'd like to do, you know, falling over when we heard how much that might cost and bringing it back to something that was closer than what we could stomach. We've been fortunate to be able to apply for some funding, which has increased our capacity to do some good stuff down there. So overall, I'm supportive of the plan. That it's a pity that some of the concerns that were raised around public safety and lighting and those kind of things that don't seem to have been addressed, which I think if they could have been addressed, that would be a great way of helping to activate that space and give people the confidence to start using it for a whole manner of things that we'd want them to use it for. But overall, it is going to revolutionise that fairly long strip in an area of our city which has fallen in the sort of forgotten trap. So when it's done, I think the residents by and large should be pretty happy with the investment, not only there but everything else that we've done around there as well. So yeah, we'll revolutionise that part of the city, and I'm looking forward to seeing it finally finished. I'm sure the residents are as well.
Indeed. Okay, further debate. Are there any other speakers to this item? Sorry, Councillor De Backer.
Yeah, I concur with the Deputy Mayor. I think it's long deserving of some money spent on it. Look, I'm still not happy with the kind of secret squirrel way in which the art group meet. I think there could be some real hero pieces, a bit like what happened with the Pulse artwork on Prospect Road, and it's just not represented in this report. So, look, having the experience with Collinswood, I'm really wanting some reassurance, and I would put the challenge to the lacrosse club, because you've got an amazing chain mesh fence along the back. You can do some significant artwork off your own back. But I think it would be really good to get some community buy-in. And again, there's a million Stobie poles down there. Can we just not do some, maybe not painting, but some of the funky stuff that we've seen in Stobie poles around the place, be it, urban art or whatever you want to call it. I think it's going to be amazing to have the overpass project at the end, because hopefully that will be a destination. And it's not just the infrastructure, it's how we program it as well. So it'd be really nice to sort of see some little, maybe we can have some street parties down Devonport Terrace for Christmas next couple of years. I think that would be really amazing to activate that end of town. So fully support it, and I'm really keen to see what sort of art initiatives are going to be in that area.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Ripp and then Pearce.
Yeah, really happy to obviously see this federal money going into this space. I do believe it's been long overdue. I know that in principle, obviously the draft, obviously it's something we've got to think about in terms of our regular communication with residents. Obviously the draft concept plans are at a maximum of 1.28 million, and we've obviously allocating the 756, so just the balance around that. But yeah, I'm really happy to see this area getting so much loved and overdue investment.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce.
Yeah, look, I've just got a couple of questions. On page 91, where we've got the scope of work, can I just get some clarification on this tube stock infill planting of $10,000 and this tree planting for 42? So do I take it that's 52,000 in trees? Is that what I'm thinking?
CEO.
Through you, Chair, to the manager.
Through the Mayor, assuming you're referring to table 2, option 1 or 2.
Yep.
So we have separated the tree planting from the other plantings. Tree plantings are approximately $32,000. So they're the whatever size trees we can actually source along fence lines.
Yep.
The tube stock or smaller will depend on what we can source on market. Again, we're hoping for probably the 6-inch pots, I think they're actually called.
Yep.
But in reality, the numbers we're after, we probably need a mixture of that and some smaller
Okay.
scale.
So one's a smaller, and then the other one's okay. And on page 95, clearly the upgrades South Avenue Road have been excluded because of the level crossing. With regard to the 400 metres from the 1838 development, 400 metres from Devonport Terrace to Regency Road, is that being left because we're waiting for the 1838 to finish that development and also the SA renewal? Is that why it's been waiting?
CEO.
Again, through you, Chair, to the manager.
Through the Mayor, at this point in time, it's excluded solely because of cost. There would certainly be some benefit in waiting for the 1838 development to be fully completed and renewal estate understand further what they're actually doing. There is quite a large amount of work required, I think, to actually make that final 400 metres safe, secure, and to a standard that I think we're all happy with. There's certainly some overlooking or lack of overlooking issues along there. There's certainly some dark corridor aspects happening, and I think it's a larger issue than this project can actually cover and should to a reasonable cost.
Because it is an area that needs to be brought up. It'd be nice when Susan Pearce finishes that she may contribute to that. I don't know. It's obviously being left out at the moment. It's a bit disappointing. But.
Further debate? Just from my perspective, I endorse this because it's going out for consultation. I'm not completely happy with the overall design, but it's important we get people's feedback to help us work out what that final design would be. We've got a community reference group, which is very small, but they'll be invited to be part of the public meeting, so it's a combined meeting. And I really look forward to that, to see who comes along and to hear their feedback and to see if we can afford to incorporate their feedback, should it be different to what we've already envisaged. The Ovingham station's also left out at this point because there's going to be a lot of work happening around there, and I think that's sensible, but there's no money to revisit it later on. And I really support landscaping along the bike path, even if it's just to get some trees in there without the groundworks being done any further, just to get some trees. So I'll be pushing hard that the contingency sum, which is in there at 15%, should that not be required in full, that it gets diverted to those two areas rather than returned to council and end up with a few shekels back in our wallet going, well, we could have done more with that on that strip because it badly needs it. And perhaps improving lighting as being the third optimum thing there. So the Ovingham station approached the landscaping the bike path, at least with trees, and then lighting if we have any spare money to work out where that lighting would be a problem. But I do support getting it out there. It's been far, far too long. The community need to have a look at this. We now at least have some more budget to allocate to it because we're miles above the $500,000 we first allocated to it. So we've got to get over that embarrassment and move forward. And I'm sure the public art body that meets Thursday this week would be delighted to be encouraged by Part 5 to start thinking of what sort of art would work there and how to engage people in that. And they have their own budget to work with, provided that we give it to them coming up in our budget deliberations. And I'm sure they'll be open to any suggestions that people have got. So they'd be very excited if we support Part 5. So happy with this so far. Any further debate? That being the case, back to Councillor Barnett, do you wish to sum up?
Yes. I just have two questions because we talk about...
You can't introduce new material in summing up. Sorry, Councillor.
No, it's on what's already mentioned in there about community consultation a few times. But it just says community consultation, and so we're going, but will there... Some of the feedback to me has that they have not been able to understand the plans. So I I'm hoping that we would actually be having a public workshop to explain the details in the design, and what we've left out, that we're concentrating on a few of these 4 main objectives. But, for example, why we can't do the lighting at the moment, because of the Odingham station and some of those. And also with the public art, would that be, it says about supporting, a public art project, but will that also go out to a community consultation process to explain to them and what we can get for the, small amount, in comparatively speaking? So they're my 2 questions first.
You have to leave the hanging, Councillor. You can't ask questions during somehow.
I'm sure, hopefully I've spoken loud enough.
I'm sure
that can be, the staff can take that on board. And I think it would be very good lighting did come up, and a few other things, but at least we've got the meeting design objectives do meet the 4, at least do meet some of the pressing ones, particularly improve the visual amenity and the screen planting. That was the overall, I think, over the last, since how many years, has come out from us, to us, and from residents and previous consultations. Yes, I'm pleased that finally, and we do have the amount of decent money in option 2 to get on and start doing it. The time frame will be tight. I'm sure our staff are very good at, realising how we feel about these things, that they can get on and do that. So I commend it to you.
Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Is carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 10.5, Delegation of Powers from Council, Planning, Development and Infrastructure Act 2016. Recommendations on page 113 to 114. Note there's a slight revision to the text in part 2 because there has to be an enactment date. CEO has politely reminded me that this is a bit of an error because we're voting to remove the previous delegations and install the new ones, but it has to happen on the date that the new code comes into play. That's the reason for the slight change in part 2. So I'm asking now if there's someone willing to move the recommendation as per what's on the screen.
Look, I'll move it to get it on the floor.
Thank you, Councillor Ripp. Would you like to speak to it?
No, that's fine.
I was going to say emotionally or not emotionally, but not at all. Okay, right. It's also an option. Is there a second? Deputy Mayor, do you wish to speak to it?
No.
Any further debate? Councillor De Backer.
I just had a question. In the instrument and delegation under the planning, there was talk about land management agreements. And I was just wondering if we need to get all our, things in order prior to the March 19th, because I know that was something that was a bit, what's the word for it? We would like some focus on maybe prior to it. Maybe straight through the chair to something that can be looked at.
Sorry, Councillor, just to be, can we make the question a little clearer for the CEO? So you're talking about land management agreements in principle or specific land management agreements we may have?
No, well, in and around the village hub, I would say specifically, and some to do with multi-storey buildings. I just note that in here, instead of being with the council, it's now going to be held with a separate entity. And land management agreements often have a start date and an end date and an agreement. And I just don't want in the transition from going up from council to an independent panel that those things aren't addressed.
CEO, is that clear enough for you?
I hope it's clear enough to the manager, Chair. Through you to the manager. Scott, do you want to come forward?
Come forward, please, manager. Did you hear the question?
I did, thank you, Chair.
Excellent.
I think I can give a brief through the chair response to this one as well. So existing land management agreements are noted on certificates of title. Every certificate of title with a land management agreement on it is being uploaded as an overlay into the new GIS tool, the SAPA, I showed councillors a couple of meetings ago. in order to ensure they're captured. The registration on the title is what's required to enliven its ongoing capacity.
So that's the current ones. In future, does the delegation enable, does it facilitate a different process other than us agreeing to an LMA?
In essence, the delegation allows the same type of matter as today, where the CAP can give consideration to an LMA as part of a development application. This maintains that ability.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, did I answer your two-part question?
Yeah, probably one more question. Just through the chair, in regards to when there's a time limit on it to be renegotiated, that's negotiated with the CAP, not the council.
Through you, Chair, to the manager.
In relation to matters linked to a development application, that would be through presumably the relevant authority, but otherwise the council is a body on the LMA, so it would be through council.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any further questions or debate on this item? If not, Councillor Ripp, would you wish to sum up? That's good, because you might have been at risk of introducing new material for it.
Asking a question.
Asking a question. That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against? It is carried unanimously. Councillor Bunning won't forgive me for months on that one. We'll talk after. 10.6, administrative amendments required to council policies resulting from final implementation of planning reforms. Recommendations on page 185 to 186 of the mover in its current form. No changes on this one. Deputy Mayor, do you wish to speak to it? Do I have a seconder?
I'll do it.
Councillor.
Obviously, we have to have the administrative amendments.
That you are entitled to speak. Did you wish to speak anymore? Any further debate?
4 words.
Councillor Group.
Sorry, I just have a question. No issue with the motion at all. It's unusual for us to approve policy without seeing the amendments, and albeit they're minor. I just want to check we're not breaching any other requirements of the Act in that way.
CEO.
Thank you, Councillor. Not to my understanding, these are genuinely minor administrative amendments with no substantive change to meaning. It's simply to align. But I fully accept that typically we would bring the full policy to council. This is an omnibus approach.
And happy not to see them all, I should add as well. I just want to make sure we're
quite a few, Councillor.
Okay.
So, CEO, I take it that you are bound by item 3, should we move this way, that all you can do is minor administrative amendments. You can't do any more than that under this.
Indeed.
Yeah. Just a further answer.
Yeah. No, it's all good. I'll support the motion.
Any further debate? Back to you, Deputy Mayor, if you wish to sum up. That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against? It is carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 10.7, elected member nominations for Chief Executive Officer's Performance Development Review Committee. Recommendations on page 188 to 189. We need 3 nominations. As per normal protocol, I'll seek leave to suspend meeting procedures to enable nominations to be taken. Seek leave to suspend until 9 p.m. should be needed. All those in favour? Against? Is carried. Okay. Does anybody wish to nominate to be on the committee? Councillor De Backer?
Yes, I'd like to be on again, if I could.
I'd like to nominate you then.
Oh, okay, thank you.
I'll take nominations from self or others, and if we need to have a vote, then we will. Councillor Nguyen?
Nominating Councillor Group.
Group, do you accept the nomination? Okay, thank you.
Then.
And Councillor Ripp? Again, self? Excellent, thank you. I have 3 nominations. There are 3 spots. There can be a 4th, in which case we'll have a vote. Are there any further nominations?
Just check what the time is. Maybe a vote would be good. No, it's all right.
I don't know, you connect those two things.
To 9 o'clock, right?
Dear. Yeah, thank you. If there are no further nominations, then we'll insert those at part 4. And could I have somebody move that way where part 4 reads the council appoints Councillor De Backer, Councillor Groot and Councillor Ripp to the Chief Executive Officer's Performance Development Review Committee for a 2-year term to November 22, which is the conclusion of this term of office. Councillor Barnett, thank you. Do you wish to speak to it?
Just to thank people for doing it.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Pearce, do you wish to speak to it? Further debate? There being none, Councillor Barnett, do you wish to sum up your excellent speech? All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Item 10.8, attendance at the National General Assembly of Local Government 2021 and calling for notices of motion. I've declared a conflict of interest for this item, and I now invite the Deputy Chair to come forward.
Deputy Chair.
Deputy
Chair,
who is effectively the Deputy Chair. Yeah.
Slip, Chair.
Deputy Boards.
Rep review saying that.
Boards. Rep review.
Representation review, looking at the name of the presiding member. One of the titles.
Chairman, I suppose so.
Yes.
There's special pen.
It hasn't been disinfected. I might steal it.
Yeah, spray it first, yeah.
Okay, so as the Mayor, I'm going to get the gavel out, Councillor Vitt.
Go on.
Keep talking. It's item 10.8, attendance at the National General Assembly of Local Government 2021 and calling for notice of motions, recommendations on pages 192 to 193. Do I have a mover? Councillor Green, do you wish to speak?
No, thank you.
Do I have a seconder?
Yeah.
Councillor Harris, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Only to say that there is another point on the next page about changing the meeting. And I haven't looked at my calendar yet to see how busy I am on June the 29th, but I'm happy to second it as it is.
Thank you. Any other discussion, Councillor Red?
I would have been quite excited if you got that out. It would have been the first time, you know. But apart from that, no, look, happy to support it. I would also encourage, maybe not this year, if people don't want to, but if you haven't been to Canberra before to the conference, I would encourage you to go and really seriously think about it. I learned a lot having been whilst I was on a previous council. It is really good. You do actually get a perspective of local government on a national level, and you see that our ways of doing things in local government compared to other states is very, very different. You'll see that other states, it's local government is not like it is here. Elections are run very differently, issues are very different across the board, and you also see how we fit in South Australia on a national perspective, and I learned a lot from it. So I would encourage, I don't think there's an opportunity in this recommendation for us to accept extra nominees, but I would encourage, if you haven't been, to look at it next year.
Thank you, Councillor. If anybody else like to speak on the Councillor Backer.
Yeah, look, I really support it, and I guess we'll get asked from people maybe saying, oh, why isn't he attending virtually, which is always an option. I think certainly getting a chance to meet face-to-face with people in the industry, and you can certainly do a lot of networking and, things about waste, and we know how our mayor's been. We might even get the little organic bags rolled out nationally even. Who would have thought? So, look, I think good things are happening by those face-to-face meetings. Maybe just a quick question through the chair, potentially to corporate services. As far as the elected member allowances for training, is there any balances left in that for this year?
Through the Deputy Chair, yes, there is. I think it was mentioned in the original when we canvassed for expressions of interest, we could potentially fund a maximum of 3 elected members from our existing training budget.
And I think that's good. Thank you very much. I think that's good information to hear, because I know the Mayor has been a champion of us doing training and things like that. I'd really like to see some training opportunities for elected members, and elected members maybe from other areas, and use Penthi as a venue. So maybe if that's something, if there's some interest from other elected members of some training that we could be doing, maybe if we can partner with other councils and have this as a venue, I think that would be a sort of double win for Prospect. So I support the motion.
Anybody else like to speak? From the chair, I think there was a couple of questions around refunds if the conference was cancelled. Did we get an answer to that, CEO?
We did. If the conference is cancelled in person, Deputy Chair, the Mayor can attend virtually.
Yep.
Sadly for the same price, but that's we've noticed that with other conferences. And secondly, flexible airfares and accommodation will be refunded, or we'll get a credit.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, if no one else wants to talk, we'll go to a vote. So all those in favour?
I get a chance to sum up.
Oh, sorry, yes. Thank you very much. Wouldn't you normally say point of order?
Oh, I was giving it a go.
Councillor Groot, would you like to give us a heartfelt summing up of the motion?
Actually, no. But what I will say is, look, these are very good events. I had the opportunity of going for a couple of years. Just to reaffirm Councillor Ripp's comments, I think it is a shame no one else is going from Prospect, and I would encourage those of you around the room who haven't been yet to put your hand up for next year, because they are really, really interesting events. So I would encourage that. But look forward to what the Mayor brings back from this in June.
Okay, so all those in favour? Against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you very much.
Don't leave it vacant. You have to stay there till it gets there. Something could happen in the room, and we need someone of authority, and you are it. Well, you know, something could happen.
Here it is.
Oh, you're right.
Someone authority.
I just didn't feel safe without you there.
Safe hands.
Oh, well, I was when you were there, but then you moved.
Yeah.
Now you've got your phone away.
Sorry, councillors. Right. Thank you. Item 10.9, leveraging council's existing procurement policy to drive recycling and environmental sustainability, recommendations on page 196. Somebody happy to move it in its current form? Councillor Barnett, you should speak to it.
Yes, and I thank the Mayor for bringing this to our attention. Again, when I was got through with the support of council about reducing our single-use plastic, but I think it needs. We're now obviously in the next stage on from that. So yeah, I had noted that our procurement policy was a bit restricted to the single plastic one when I introduced it. So this is more, I think, a broader approach, and I think it's very good for us to be looking at this, and especially feedback from the audit committee on this. So I commend it to us through you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ripp, do you wish to speak to it?
Look, yeah, just to echo Councillor Barnett's comments, and to say obviously this matter absolutely was discussed at the audit committee as well, and take note of point 3 in the recommendation, but happy to support it.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor De Backer.
Yeah, look, I again support it, examining our buying culture and supply chains and things like that, and thinking about embodied energy as well. So when we, you know, rip out things and put in new things and whatever, you know, sometimes we can fix what we've got, sometimes. But when we are getting something new, that we're really thinking about the environmental impacts. Are we sourcing it locally? What are going to be the environmental impacts? So, yeah, support the motion.
Thank you. Any further debate? Being the case, Councillor Barnett, do you wish to sum up?
No.
No, that concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against? It is carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 10.10, Council Quarter 2 Budget Review 2020-2021, recommendations on page 211. Have a mover in its current form. Councillor Grigg, wish to speak to it.
Yes, I will. So, first of all, thank you. It's always good to get budget reviews that are so favourable. I think this is quite significant, and particularly with the reduction in loan interest at almost $500,000. So that's significant. It's material and substantial. So, thank you for that. I just had a question about the accounting treatment for the Campbelltown depot lease. Whether Gina, you can just, whether through the chair, the Director of Corporate Services, just talk a bit about that to us.
Through you, Chair, to the Director.
Chair, that adjustment is a full figure adjustment. We need to actually acknowledge that the lease in our operating lease. It is a book figure adjustment that has no impact on our cash. Our budget.
I think the budget review processes are really interesting, aren't they? Because as we go through them, we have ons and offs, and this one happens to be a fairly significant one, I would say. And just reflecting back on processes earlier this evening, I have always been one to advocate very prudent management of our finances, and particularly in terms of not doing policy on the run. We've had two issues before us tonight that both will come up at the third budget review. And I guess I'm just commenting on whether there's a framework we can use around, well, how do we kind of forward, because we have no idea what that budget review is going to look like in budget quarter 3, except for those two that we've got tonight, which are fairly minor immaterial costs and not sort of material to budget. But I just think we do that without the context of the ons and offs. And I guess I'm just raising that as a conundrum more than anything else, because we do make decisions around money and refer them to a budget review without actually really knowing what that impact's going to be. Anyway, I'll just make that comment, and I would concur with Councillor De Becker's comments. I normally totally agree with it, apart from I thought the increase of $20,000 was immaterial, particularly given us such a large positive variance. But I think from a principle basis, she's absolutely correct, and we should think about how we when we make those decisions, knowing what that impact is really going to be, because we might come back for budget review 3 for quarter 3 and find that we're actually in a deficit position, not a surplus, if there's things that are happening. Anyway, just leave those thoughts with you. But otherwise, thank you very much for the good work.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor De Becker.
I'll second forward Councillor Grigg after agreeing with me. It's always nice. Yeah, look, I think, because it's always hard saying no to people about money, but yeah, certainly process. And I think before we get too excited about this favourable budget review, I know that we've got an asset management plan coming, and there's some big surprises in that, I'm sure. So I know Adelaide City Council has had their sort of review recently. So I think, in a long-term financial plan, I think there's probably going to be some things. I had some residents talking to me earlier this morning at dinner about the state of their footpaths. And I'm sure we've had lots of people in our McGregor Tan surveys talking about the state of their footpath. So there's lots of other things that we need to spend money on that should have had money spent on them probably 10 or 15 years ago to do all this other great fun stuff that we're doing. So I'm keen to just follow that slow and diligent path. And when we've got the extra money, then we can spend it. So I'll support it.
Thank you. Sorry, didn't want to cut you off there. Any further debate? Councillor Ripp.
Yeah, look, obviously noting the favourable budget review opposition, but I will take note that although this budget period is reporting a favourable net budget adjustment of 468,543, if we actually look at it against our budget to start with, it's only 174,123. Look, it's good, but let's take into account that the first budget review also was quite a hit as well. So look, we're in favour though. We're in front of 174,123, which is great. I just wanted to ask a question, if I could, just for the administration to explain, I guess, for the general sort of person in the community that reads this, where it says our current expected budget deficit is 449,806, just to explain what that means in terms of net surplus, because most people would read this and think, well, we're actually in a deficit, not a surplus. So particularly for the residents out there, what that actually means, because most people would look at this and say, well, you're actually behind, you're not in a surplus. So I just wanted to
through you, Chair, to the Director.
You don't want to take it? Director.
I could do. It's
Okay. Director. Adopted a deficit budget, operating budget of 624,000, and through the first budget review, because of carryover, that has increased to nearly $1 million, 980,000 deficit. So this surplus, favorable budget, is not surplus, it's a favorable budget adjustment, has reduced that impact on the deficit. That is where we are still in deficit. We still have a funding pressure, but that has reduced that.
Thank you. Councillor?
So I've known I've had a resident ask me in the past where they've seen this and they don't understand. On here I do, but I think it's good that you've explained it like that, because it sort of reads like we're actually in a surplus in the executive summary, even though we're not. So so I think maybe the explanation in executive summary, I don't know if that can be changed, but I know I've had a resident ask me a question on this in the past, but obviously I've explained now we're in a deficit position.
Yeah. Correct. Any further debate? Councillor Pearce.
It's a question. Yes, we're in a better deficit position. That's what it is.
Yeah.
In the unfavourable items, there's the reduction in interest due to deferral loan repayments, 69,000. So that being just a deferral, I gather that will become favourable when we receive that at some stage. It's not.
It'll be a year. It'll all be a year late, to my understanding. But I'll see
Again through you, Chair.
Director.
Through the Chair, that is correct. That is a timely. That is a retiming of deferral loan due to our COVID financial package to a community, to defer that community loan by 1 year. So that was budgeted this financial year. It's budgeted that we won't receive this income, but it will add on to the end of the loan term that we will receive that income.
So it'll come back favourable, I guess, in 1 year somewhere down the track.
1 year somewhere.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Question on the same table on page 214. So item E, operational efficiency or productivity gains, 0. So is that typically 0, or is this an anomaly that we don't identify any operational efficiency or productivity gains? CEO, happy to.
Again through you, Chair. Sorry.
Through the Chair, this specific category is when there is a specific effort in actually achieving a productivity gain for council. We record it in there. If it's just a normal circumstance where we have spent less than what we have budgeted, we don't traditionally classify in that area.
So I guess my question then is, do we not have any operational efficiency or productivity gains activities going on at the moment? I understand why we might not have proceeded that. Are we not looking for savings in that area through those two channels?
CEO?
Councillor, I think Deputy Mayor, I think we're always looking for operational efficiency and productivity gains wherever we can. I think the question is how we value them. I would hope that we're doing it all the time, but whether they get substantive enough to be valued as part of this in a budget review, they would have to be fairly substantial through your Chair to the Director. I mean, they would have to be very substantial gains for us to note them. We would hope, responding to your question, we're always looking for those efficiencies.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
That's fine, thanks.
Further debate? Councillor Gooch, wish to sum up?
I was just thinking of an answer to my hypothetical question earlier, and I wonder whether we could time any decisions around spending money or indeed giving up money, although it's normally about spending money, to this we do budget reviews so that they come together. Probably impractical for a lot of reasons, but we just need to be aware of that, I think. So anyway, I'll just leave that where it is. I commend the motion. Well done to staff for working hard as always for us, particularly in this space.
Thank you. Concludes the debate. All those in favour? It is carried unanimously. Indeed. General business, urgent business. Are there any items of an urgent nature, noting that I'll have to seek leave through a motion to make sure that it can be considered? Councillor Ripp.
Might be urgent, but I just thought I would check with you. Item 9, questions about notice. Was that overlooked tonight, or was I just didn't hear you ask for that? But I could be wrong.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah. Good point, actually.
Because you brought the items forward, and I have a couple of questions here.
I did omit that. Yeah, I blame the CEO for not being on top of his game. Merely because I feel I can do that, but it's actually my fault. So if there's no general business of an urgent nature, because I've called that, I will then move to questions without notice. There being none, let's do questions without notice. Oh.
Sorry, did you say questions without notice?
Urgent business.
Oh, yeah, I thought we did. Okay, sorry.
So no urgent business. I'll now move to, You've got to keep up with me constantly.
Sorry.
I know it's hard because I didn't mean to do that, but we'll go to item 9, which I apologise for skipping over before.
Crazy, that's good.
Questions without notice, Councillor Rip.
Yeah, just first one in regards to process, and I'm not sure, obviously through the chair, who you'd like to direct this to, but I've got a question around process with project management and the missing of opportunities for openings. Obviously, I've had some residents contacting me saying, okay, when's the opening happening, or is there an event or opening happening of the dog park and associated things. So I just want to ask what the process is around project management, ticking things off, particularly for openings, and particularly where we've got projects where we've been given state or federal money. We need to really involve those stakeholders somehow as well. So I just want to ask, I know it's broad, and I want it to be broad so the administration can respond, but process around project management and openings, particularly with state and federal money being given.
So yeah, thank you for the question. Really, it's horses for courses. We've got Charles Kane Reserve coming up, and we'll do a major opening for that with funding. We don't always have to involve funders, but where there's conditions, of course, we'll have to comply. With the dog park, given our enormous commitment around our events team, fringe and everything else, to do a full-blown opening of a small dog park would actually require COVID marshals, a COVID-safe plan, and an extraordinary amount of staff time and probably contractor time and volunteer time. What we've come up with is something that will bring people with their dogs to the park because they're the major users. We want them to take a photo. The winner gets a photo with the mayor and basically a gift pack.
So they'll be lining up.
And it means we can do that spreading out over a whole weekend without having a COVID marshal. I do appreciate that Broadview Playground was opened just as we came into the Christmas season. To have kept those fences up would have kept children out of there for weeks because we couldn't have done anything within that time frame. And wherever we can, we of course, value and celebrate those things as we will do with Charles Kane Reserve. But for something as small as a dog park, while it's very important for people with dogs, right now we simply didn't have every single body and hours committed to our events program. And we were aware of budget restraints. And so we're doing something we think will capture the imagination of dog owners and we'll get a lot of stuff on social. And we hope that will work.
CEO, can I just come back to the nature of the question, because is there a project management approach to organising openings rather than a reactive post-project management approach to putting something together?
No, there's always a project management approach to any opening. The question is, what are the resources? What's the budget for it? Do we have a contractual condition to involve funders? So they're always project managed. It's a question of just the size of them.
I perhaps sort of encourage you to reflect on that answer. In terms of my question, I think the question is not. The project management is design, tender, construction, opening in the context of that team, rather than now we've decided to have an opening. Should we project manage how the opening would work? That's my understanding of the question. That it's owned by the same team that designs and implements, rather than missed by them and picked up by another part of your team. I think that was the question. Yeah. So everything we do is an opening or some announcement to the public included in the scheme from day one. But I'm sorry to rephrase it, but I think that's the question. You don't have to answer it now, but I think that's.
I'll take that on notice. Certainly. Thank you.
Any further, Councillor?
Yeah, just also on another note, in terms of the city prospect, I know we've been active on social media in our response to assist and get information out about fruit fly, but obviously with the latest concern with the 1,500 properties around Prospect and Stepney being caught up in, I guess, what they're calling emergency response needed. Is there anything more that residents in Prospect just need to be wary of in regards to that? And staff being further involved in that?
Beating fruit. So, my understanding, councillors, we've been very active on social media, just with warnings. I know that we are in the epicentre of the fruit fly issue. I'm not sure what else we could do in terms of warnings, and certainly state government's been, as you know, very proactive.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor DeBacker, do you have a question?
It was just more in regards to the dog park, just regards to the communication of it. So I think it was more, not knowing about it, because I think you're talking about before project planning. Just with the question, with the communications team, are they, as part of their remit or whatever, anything like that, do they put that out to elected members or put it out to?
They should do. Yeah, absolutely.
It fell by the wayside.
Yeah.
Did that one fall by the wayside?
We didn't hear anything about it. I heard it second and third hand.
Okay, well, my apologies. That shouldn't have occurred.
Probably helped out late in the piece, but it was way after it.
I mean, so yeah, just to clarify, there was no notification to elected members about the opening of the playground, and then after I made some noise about that, no notification about the opening of the dog park. There seems to me to be a complete lack of understanding about how these things are an event and that we could help with that event. And there's no learning going on, because I presume it's the same team. So just feedback. To find a point on it, ratepayers and us fund a communications element to your team, and so therefore a bit of consternation. So, of course. Any further questions about notice, Councillor Griff?
Look, just one brief one, just in relation to the petition we received in the December meeting from in relation to parking restrictions on Alpha Road. I've just had a question from one of the petitioners asking what's happened, where's it at? They're keen for a response. So I'm just, my question really is, when is that likely to come back to council?
That had advanced. So CO...
letter went, I've seen a letter that went to the street.
I believe so, yes. There has been something. CO, who could confirm what?
Just through you, Director, are you still online?
The Chair, yes. We're planning to bring that report back in March. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director, there has been a letter sent and people are considering options, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
That answer your question?
Yeah, no, my question wasn't about the process, it's about when it's coming back to council.
Thank you. Any further questions about notice? There being none, of my apologies for missing that item earlier. All the excitement around a petition and a deputy. Oh, very me. Moving on then to item 12, reports for information. As per the protocol, we'll get someone to move these on block unless they're withdrawn for debate. Does anybody wish to withdraw item 12.1, monthly mayoral report? Anybody wish to withdraw item 12.2, the audit committee meeting minutes? No. Councillor Ripp. Does anybody wish to withdraw item 12.3, the council assessment panel 2020 annual activity report?
Yes, please.
Backer. Item 12.4, does anybody wish to withdraw the annual business plan 2020-21-22 budget process schedule and timeline?
Thanks.
Councillor Pearce. And does anybody wish to withdraw item 24.5, roles of assessment manager, council assessment panel and council and planning development and infrastructure act 2016, the new planning system?
Please.
Backer. Okay.
I'm not just going to move yours. Leave that to someone else.
Someone wishes to move on block, which means no debate, item 12.1.
Yeah.
Councillor Ripp, seconder. Yeah. Councillor Barnett, there being no debate, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Make it seem strange when it's... Anyway. Item 12.2, Councillor Ripp, do you wish to move it?
Yes, I do. And I'd also like to note, I believe you would have got a copy of our workshop agenda, so it wasn't obviously just the minutes of this meeting. We also held a really, really productive workshop, and I actually gained a lot out of that. We received an email before the workshop asking us our views about risks to the organisation and any opportunities we sort of see and any sort of issues in terms of risks and strategic things to keep an eye on. And they gave that to all the independent members, the mayor and myself, and then they went away, came back, and then they started modelling that. And it was actually really, really good to see. It was really interactive, and I gained a lot of that. So there'll be more to come from that. So that's one to watch. Not sure when the mayor might be able to add. I'm not sure when it's going to come back that to audit committee or council, but it was a really, really productive workshop, and you'll see some more about risks and how we manage those risks into the future. And I think a lot of there was a lot of consensus around some of the major issues, I guess, moving forward, particularly around cyber safety, around project management, and that was even talked about there about how we're going to manage the state and federal grant programs and that project management side of it, as well as responding to customer inquiries, customer service, just boots on the ground stuff. So it was a really, really productive workshop, I thought. That was held after that meeting.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Harris, do you wish to speak to it?
No, sir, I'm happy with the mover.
Any further debate?
What he said.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
That's all right.
Any further debate? That being the case, Councillor Ripp, would you like to sum up your excellent speech? That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against? Is carried unanimously. 12.3, the Council Assessment Panel Activity Report. Councillor De Backer, would you like to move it?
I will. So I'll move it and then discuss it. I've just got to get back to my page. So as you know, I was involved in the Council Assessment Panel and also have been involved in some of the periphery activities around planning and design code, and I know City of Prospect's been quite active in that. I guess I just wanted to sort of highlight with the assessment panel, I guess, what it does. So now we're not the delegated authority, that's the delegated authority. We do have independent people that are on this this panel. My understanding was questioned through the chair that their time is up in October and they would have to reapply. Is that correct? Yeah, well, I'm getting a nod there from Scott McCluskey.
Ask the chair, get a nod, right? Yeah, yeah.
Through the chair. Sorry.
Apparently not, but that's okay. I'll take the question if you've got one, but if you want to keep moving, that's fine.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So I think I'm just highlighting, obviously, my frustration with the CAP has always been the type of reports to highlight and weight the design quality. And design quality is always subjective. So I think that's sort of something to think about. The other thing that I have been looking at is other people's CAPs, and with going into the new planning and design code, is there going to be, and this is maybe another question through the chair, a standardised report format across all inner city councils that does weight, going from a planning code to a planning and design code, to actually put the right amount of emphasis in design? Because quite often we see the prescriptive things up front. I noticed that in other City of Charles Sturt is putting something before their CAP with a suggested template format, and I've asked the governance officer if it's something that the council can influence, because I think if you get a good report, you've got a very informed decision. If you get a bad report, you don't necessarily get a good decision. And it was come back through an email this week that not necessarily do CAP members actually visit the site. Now, I chose to as a CAP member, but that's not necessarily the case. So I'm just highlighting some things in the CAP and also the roles of assessment manager later. But the CAP, they have to reapply in October, and I'd be really interested to know with the standardised format for the new CAP and decision-making process, because the way I see it, this whole process has changed, but our reports haven't. I don't know how to.
Is there a question in there that you want me to check on the reports?
I could, yeah, if you could check if the report format is changing.
Okay, thank you. CEO.
Yeah, through you, Chair, to the manager, Scott.
If you'd like to come forward, Manager. A standard or non-standard way. Thank you. Did you hear the question?
I did, thank you,
Okay,
Chair.
thank you.
And through the Chair, there will be some necessary changes to the reporting structure, in particular for the performance assessed applications that the panel will be regularly seeing. The types of provisions within the code that they will need to assess that against won't be as obvious as any other type of application. And we recognise that there will be a need to provide some form of other attachment or excerpt of the code to identify those things, and that will necessitate a report format change.
So there's a few bits to this question.
Yep.
Second part of it was, is there going to be a standard one across all councils using the code?
Through the Chair, no.
Okay. Third part was, will there be more of an emphasis on design because the code is called a planning and design code?
Through the chair, to the extent that there are some additional policies in the code, principally in the residential infill space around additional design quality, yes. Though the council will be aware of the staff concern around design quality provisions that apply to three-storey townhouses in the current draft planning design code. And if we don't see those changes enacted, I don't think we see an improvement in the policy in the design quality space.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, does that answer your question, all the bits of it?
Answers it, but
You might not be happy with that, but thank you. Thank you, Manager. Anything further, Councillor? Do I have a seconder? Item 12.3. Councillor Riff, do you wish to speak to it?
No.
Any further debate? That concludes. Sorry, Councillor DeBacker, do you wish to sum up? That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? Is carried unanimously. 12.4, the annual business plan and budget process scheduled timeline. Councillor Pearce, did you wish to move it?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Speak to it.
Just quickly, it's a very concise and clear budget timeline. Obviously, quite a few of the items already been satisfied. Just with our first workshop being the 2nd of March, which is next week, obviously, which will be relevant, when we'll be getting, if we do know, any results from the grants we've applied for?
CEO, several.
Yes, there's a number of dates. I just wonder, are you across that through your chair, Manager? There's a range of dates. The first one's the stormwater, I believe.
Yeah, we should hear about stormwater as early as March, possibly. The approval processes for that is quite different to the other ones. The federal grants I wouldn't expect to hear from until late May, June, even, depending on their internal processes.
The Reckon Sport?
I don't know about the Reckon Sport, sorry.
Yes, he's on. Come through you, Chair. Director, are you online?
For the chair, Reckon Sport, we're hoping in May. You hear back.
Yep. Thank you, Director. Councillor Pearce.
Well, is our process going to be affected by that? That's my question. How are we going to address that? Through the workshops, etc.?
I guess, CEO, the budget will have to be constructed on us having favourable grant outcomes, I presume, or is there a probability filter put on it, or how are you going to direct your team?
Well, I think through your chair, first of all, what we are proposing is that we're committing to a maximum borrowing capacity, and that assumes that we're successful in 3 out of the 4 grants. We have a problem if we're successful in all grants because that will exceed our maximum borrowing capacity, and we would bring that back to council for the decision. We're running on the basis at the moment that we will get. There's a reasonable probability around stormwater, we understand. We're unsure of the other grants. We would hope that we'd get 2 out of 3. So we simply have to go on the basis, given the timelines, that we have a maximum borrowing capacity and we'll be applying that.
Councillor? Anything further?
No, fine, thank you.
Have a seconder. Councillor Harris, do you wish to speak to it?
No, thank you.
Any further debate? Councillor Groot.
Sorry, this is a very, very minor issue, but it will just assist me and maybe some others in the chamber. The table has got different colour coding. As a member of the colour-blind fraternity, I cannot tell the difference between orange and green. So I know it's a very minor thing, but if you could maybe just redistribute that table with different colours, that would be good, because I am struggling with it. But thank you very much. This is an exciting time of the year, I think. I'm really looking forward to it. So thank you to CEO and Director and staff for putting it together.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Pearce, wish to sum up?
No, I think Councillor Groot said it all very well.
Fantastic. That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against? It is carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 12.5, roles of assessment manager, etc., etc., etc. Councillor DeBacker, do you wish to move it in its current form?
I will. Yep. So in its current form, and I'll also just a question on page 257 in regards to the planning system roles, assessing planning application. So under the new planning system, the assessment manager will be responsible for the assessment of all applications that do not require public notification, except where planning private certifiers undertake the assessment, which may only occur in limited circumstances. So my understanding is, so with the residential zones, so some sort of areas in Broadview, that can be done by private certifiers, but my understanding is non-complying, not straightforward ones either come through the assessment manager and or the CAP. I suppose my question was, we do have a planning team. Does the assessment manager mean that everything goes through the manager, or does he then in turn delegate it to graduate planners or junior staff to assess?
See ya.
Chair, I'll have to put that through you to the person who will become the assessment manager.
Very popular tonight, Manager. Thank you for being here.
Through the chair, yes. So in my role as assessment manager, I will need to delegate a number of administrative and other functions to staff, including assessment decision-making functions. The level to which the assessment of certain matters is delegated will depend on the role of staff. So the council does employ a graduate planner, for example, who would not be undertaking complex performance assessed applications. That would be the task of our senior planner.
Okay, thank you. Councillor.
Yeah, so just going back, because it doesn't make that clear. So under page 257, it says the assessment manager be responsible for the assessment of all applications that do not require. So it doesn't say that maybe the delegation to other staff is in another page.
Through the chair, no. So under the Act, the assessment manager is responsible for all of those assessments. If a decision was made by a delegate of the assessment manager and that was appealed, for example, the appeal would be against me as the assessment manager.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. No, it's just I wasn't pretty.
No, broad shoulders, clearly. Thank you. Anything further, councillor? You wish to speak to the motion? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Groot.
Look, nothing really to say except that I found the tables really, really helpful. I was just wondering if it's possible for us to have this report maybe emailed to us separately out of the council pack, because I think it's a useful tool that we can use with residents or with others.
Through you, Chair, of course. Mr. Dabrowski, can you just make sure that happens? That this is sent out as a separate set of tables, and just we'll go through them again and make sure they're as clear as they possibly.
No, it's very good. So thank you. I think it's a really good reference tool for us as elected members. So
thank you. Any further debate? Speaking of the tables, speaking from the chair, I did call into question one about creating or amending planning policy. The very first one on page 253. Maybe I've been around too long. It says create or amend planning policy. Under the current system, it has a nice yes there, saying that council can actually amend current policy. I thought, well, why is it so frustrating then to do it? So I think it's a qualified yes, given that we can't change a damn thing without the approval of the minister, and we can't even begin a change process without the minister agreeing to us beginning the change process. So I thought the yes was a heavily qualified yes. Under the new system, the no is a little uncertain. I would say it's not a definitive no, because I've asked on behalf of the whole sector the planning commissioner to define the change process going forward, and he can't. They're still writing it as in the change process, which I find extraordinary. So I assume that council, well, it says elsewhere in the paper that council can initiate a change to a planning policy, and therefore the answer is as much yes to the new as it was under the old. So I think I'd like, if you're going to send it out again, CEO, if you could just clarify that yes and no on that particular item. There is one slight change, and that is that anyone can ask for a change to the planning policy or to the code going forward. And that's going to be quite interesting, because that means that you could initiate a change to the planning code around your own block or another block of land. Now, you might not want to do that for your house, but if you owned a shopping centre, you might, or if you owned a sheep paddock, you might. We've been assured that the council will be involved in at least commenting on those types of applications for changing the code. So there is a process requirement for councils to be consulted as part of that. So that'll be interesting. Developer-sponsored code changes were possible before, and they will be again, but this makes it easier for those to happen. There were a couple of other things in there that I thought were a pretty minor change in terms of defending assessment decisions. I didn't think there was much difference between the old and the new, but in terms of who fronts up might be different, but it's still us, our staff, our money if there's a challenge to our decision. Whether you say it's our money as council or our money as the assessment manager, it's the same bucket. So I've had interesting discussion with the CEO around whether the assessment manager is actually going to be a state officer rather than a council officer in this instance, because the assessment manager appears to be bound by the code and can't be influenced by council, being us. I said, well, that's interesting because CEO is your employee, so surely you'd be able to influence your employee. And the question that Councillor DeBacker asked before about, is there a standard report that requires the assessment manager to actually answer some standard questions in the assessment process, is a really good way of exploring that topic further. Say, well, assessment manager, are you using the best template across the sector? Or are you using a template that puts a heavy emphasis on design? Or are you asking the questions which the elected members in the CAP have insisted be asked around two-storey houses over the last few years, because we know the community is sensitive to it? Are they in your assessment process? And I would have thought that the CEO is perfectly entitled to ask those questions, despite the fact that the state are trying to set up this strange scenario where the assessment manager is somehow separate from council. Well, we'll see how this goes in implementation, but I have suggested to the CEO and other councils previously that if the state government want to take over this process, then go their hardest. They can take it over, but they'll be getting every bit of blame for every single decision, like we appear to do right now. So they should be careful what they wish for. So I just wanted to make that really clear, but I'm happy to go along with the changes to see how they go, provided that the change process is amenable to fairly rapid change. One of the other things the sector said quite clearly is, if you want to do reforms, one of the big processes is, one of the big problems of the current system, it's so hard to change it when you find there's a problem, or you've got an aspiration to do something different. So hopefully the new process will be quicker. And finally, on page 256, it talks about what our CAP won't be doing. They won't be looking at two-storey houses because they'll be deemed to be done by the assessment manager. They'll only be looking at items that require public notification. And much in our corridor zone doesn't require public notification unless it's adjoining another zone. So that's some of, but not all of, the corridor zones. In other words, they'll be dealing with, it's estimated, 10 to 20 applications per year. They meet every month. So they might be looking at one item a month, or no items in some months and 2 or 3 in other months. It strikes me that that's not a very good use of a resource. And I don't think they'll get rusty. They're all professional people. But it might give the CEO a cause to consider whether a regional CAP might be better value and bring active minds around these topics rather than people who come together, to deal with one matter a month, which I think would not keep people on their toes and active and thinking about our community. It might be better to have a regional approach with similarly structured councils with similar interests, so they've got a CAP which is really active all the time, given that it's the same code across all those councils. So it's just a thought. I'm not proposing it at this stage, but I'm not sure that having one item per month is a good use of people or our ratepayers' money. So those are my thoughts, but the tables have been really very useful, and I do commend the council group for asking for those to be sent out separately. That's a good idea. Thank you. Any further debate on this item? There being none, Councillor DeBacker, do you wish to sum up? That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? It is carried unanimously. Thank you. Council member reports and briefings. Are there any? Councillor Nguyen. A handout.
All right, so on the 7th of February, just a few weeks ago, I went with the Mayor to and we attended the Vietnamese boat monument unveiling ceremony. It was a beautiful event. I sat there quite emotional, thinking about my parents' sea journey and the sacrifices that they made, the hard decisions, all for a better future, for freedom, for the children. The event was also, it was really important. It commemorated the thousands of lives that weren't so lucky, who perished along the way. This monument has got incredible history for the Vietnamese community. And the document that I just sent through to you has got meaning behind the sculptures, and just some background information. The local artists, Tony Rosella and Ash Barrios, did an incredible job with the design. They captured the empathy of all refugees by conveying the themes of their epic journey for freedom, future, resilience, and gratitude. So it was a really, it was a wonderful event, and I'm sure the mayor enjoyed it too.
Absolutely, indeed, yeah. Where is that?
That's on the riverbank, on the corner of Kintle Avenue and Victoria Drive. So if you're in the area, drop by and have a look.
Yeah. And I was escorted to my seat by Twee, who works at Mirati's, who I was surprised to see there. She said, well, my parents came out, my dad's been involved, and I'm here helping him because he asked me. It's a great day. I'll take you to your seat. It was delightful. So there were all sorts of people there that you would know. It was a great occasion. Yeah, thanks, Councillor. Yeah. Any further councillor briefings or thoughts? Councillor Rip.
Yeah, just a quick one. Just wanted to acknowledge the Broadview Football Club had 3 past female players actually debut, all for the West Coast Eagles actually on the AFL Women's on the weekend. So it was Lauren Gucci, Caitlin Pope, and Amber. And I was trying to track down Amber's surname as well, but that wasn't noted. But yeah, so Broadview have been actively promoting that. So they've had 3 female players debut recently for the West Coast Eagles in the AFL Women's. So just something to note.
That's good. They're crazy. Like I should fly over and watch them play. Yeah, mate, just a private thought.
When I come back.
Any further, Councillor Deputy Mayor?
Well, this is sort of a vicarious report. It was good to see the streets of the city of Prospect featured in the Amazing Race last night. I'm not sure if anyone watches the Amazing Race Australia, but they ended up lost, but found themselves luckily in Braun Road in the Westford, as it might have been. They didn't want to leave. They were thinking it was such a good place to stay, but they had to move on. So just thought I'd make a note of that.
I thought it was the Central Ward.
Thank you. Were you hosting them or just anyway?
I knew where to go.
That's amazing.
Yeah, back in Adelaide.
That's it. Yeah. No, that's good. That's a good start. And we were going to start these reports somewhere, Deputy Mayor, and I really encourage you. That's good. Watch the episode now. Councillor DeBacker, did you?
Oh yeah. Look, I just wanted to thank everyone for the opportunity to attend the reconciliation breakfast a couple of weeks ago with Councillor Pearce and Councillor Harris and the Mayor. It was certainly you always learn something, and I think it was really poignant to sort of hear some stories of people from the stolen generation and realise that they're not all old. There's still people that are quite recent and maybe even only recently found out about their heritage. So it was really, really moving, I think. And certainly I think with our wrap, we'd like to hear back a little bit more about what's happening. And I think there was some email correspondence about that. So, because I think we can always learn more. So thanks again for the opportunity.
Excellent. Thank you. Councillor Harris.
Yes, I was lucky enough to be there the same sort of breath, and it's very interesting in the path we're taking in Prospect that some of those people on the stage that pointed out, particularly that man that didn't know for his first 38 years that he was Aboriginal of any sort. But I go to personal friends in Mawson Street, and when Grandma died, they discovered when they went through the drawers that they were Aborigines. So they're local people here. So hopefully our movement as we go along we're going to be able to find some of those things. The other couple of things I was very interested in this one, and that we still have a government today that still keeps people locked up because they came from a different way. But the other one was, I didn't speak on everyone's behalf, but I tried to today when we're down there and those people that have got the awards or whatever. Eleni Gluftas, she got one of them, and Eleni doesn't live here now, but I was lucky enough she's been here because of COVID for the last 4.5 months, and she owns property here, but that's her business and that, so she's still part of Prospect, and I'm hoping from the chair here that we sent some sort of congratulation to her, although I did mention and said David would be thinking of you.
Yeah, we couldn't get it tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, good point. Okay, thanks. Any further briefings, reports? Councillor Pearce?
Just to follow up on that, that's the second reconciliation breakfast I've been to, and they are really truly a great, inspiring morning. I somehow lost the email for the Vietnamese monument because I wanted to attend that, but I somehow lost the email. Didn't realise it was on that day, which is a pity.
We didn't get.
I got an invitation, but I lost it.
Worth a visit.
Yeah.
It's actually really hard to see the memorial on the day. It's surrounded by people, but definitely worth a visit, and take that when you go. Just understand sculpture, and think about $500,000 when you're there, because that's what it costs. Just memorial arts and public memorial projects and public art and logs you could buy for that. Yeah. Snake logs. Motions on notice, there are nil. Questions with notice, there is one from Councillor Robin Pearce on page 260. And I'll read out the questions and the answers provided to me just to make life simple. Irish Harp Reserve, has community consultation for the upgrade commenced? How broad is the consultation? The answer provided is that community consultation seeking feedback regarding the upgrade of Irish Harp Reserve will commence in March 2021. Following the consultation, a report will be presented to Council. A budget bid has also been created for consideration to upgrade Irish Harp Reserve as part of the draft 2021-22 annual business plan and budget. Question 2. With the recent fatality at the Guildford Avenue and Maud Street intersection, I understand that Council will be undertaking consultation for Alabama Avenue and Guildford Avenue in regard to either having give way or stop signs at the Maud Street intersection. Has consultation commenced? The answer provided, as part of Council's existing road renewal works, we are resealing Maud Street this financial year. As part of our notification to the community planned for March 2021, on this construction project, Council intends to notify residents of the change of prioritisation of the roads at the intersections of Maud Street with both Alabama Avenue and Guildford Avenue. This change will result in give way signage, not stop signs, giving priority to through traffic on Maud Street and slowing traffic approaching the existing spoon drains. Okay, thank you, Councillor Pearce, for those questions, and thank you, staff, for the answers.
I might just add, sorry, it should...
You're not at liberty to.
Well, I won't then.
Thank you. But we've closed the meeting soon. You can say whatever you like. Confidential items, there are nil. Meeting is closed at 9:43. And be pleased if you want to join us for some refreshments after the meeting and to hear what Councillor Pearce wanted to say.
Well, I reckon they